We are recording.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
thank you. Good evening. Seeing a presence of a quorum, I am calling the February 2nd, 2026 regular meeting of the Town Council to order at 6:31 p.m. Please be advised that this meeting is being held in person and that the remote access option for members of the public is provided as a courtesy only. In the event of technology issues with the remote connection, the meeting will continue in person as scheduled as long as there is a quorum of the council present in the town room or through technological means. Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, extended through June 30, 2027, gives the ability of the public bodies to meet without a quorum in the council physically present at a meeting location, although a quorum of the council is present in the town room. This meeting is being recorded and is accessible in real time via Zoom, phone, and as a live broadcast on Amherst Media Channel 9 and at amherstmedia.org. I will call upon each counselor by the name they have indicated that they would like to be addressed. This will indicate that we can hear you and you can hear us. Counselor Breivik.
Present.
Counselor Cano-Martin.
Present.
Andy Churchill.
Present.
Anna Devon-Gauthier.
Present.
Lynn Griesemer.
Present.
Mandy Jo Haneke is present. Counselor Lord.
Present.
Sam McLeod.
Present.
Pam Rooney.
Here.
Counselor Ryan.
Present.
Kathy Shane.
Here.
Jennifer Taub.
Here.
Counselor Walker.
Here.
If counselors have technical issues, please let either the council clerk or Sean over here know, or call a point of personal privilege. There will be one public comment period during the general public comment. If you are in the town room, please sign up with Sean to make public comment. If you are attending remotely, I will ask for you to raise your hand in the Zoom application when we reach the time for public comment. Okay. So we are going to, as stated on our agenda, move directly from now to the legislative update number 7 on our agenda, and then we'll go back and take the rest of the agenda in order. I want to thank Senator Comerford and Representative Dahm for taking the time to be here tonight to present this update and answer questions from the councilors. We have approximately 1 hour for this agenda item. Senator and Representative, if you can come up and sit here. I think the mic is on. And Athena, you should have the presentation if you could share that for everyone to see. I think you'll have to speak close to it, but.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm Mindy Dahm. I'm the state rep of the 3rd Hampshire District. I have the honor and privilege of representing the town of Amherst in the State House in the Massachusetts legislature. And before we begin, before I give this to my unbelievable partner in legislating and representing Amherst, I just want to thank you for inviting us to participate in tonight's presentation. We're available for a repeat if you need it before a year is up, but we're really grateful to be here to give you this update.
Thank you, Rep. Dahm. Hi, everybody. I'm Jo Comerford. I represent the Hampshire Franklin Worcester District, which includes the beautiful community of Amherst, which I get to work in with Rep. Dahm. In addition to thanking you for allowing us to come and speak to you this evening, I just want to start by thanking you for your service. Mindy and I believe that what you do is the hardest job in government. And we know it at the local level. Is just hard work. And our job is to try to make what you do easier. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we don't. And tonight is about a little bit of both, I imagine, right? Getting to hear from you where we could do better.
I'm going to start. I just want to say, so how we're going to present this, for those of you who were on the council before, it may sound a little familiar in the beginning part. We're going to review just the legislative process and the budgetary process, and then get into the issues that are relevant to Amherst, just so that there's context for our work in Boston. That's not our work here. That's our work there. And then we'll bring it back to Amherst. Senator.
All right, let's we can move to the next slide if that's okay. All right, so we're a 2-year session we're in the 25-26 legislative session. And over that 2-year session, we do one set of bills. We do one set of bills and 2 budgets. And we're going to talk first about the set of bills. Thanks to great advocacy statewide, our rules have become much more on the side of transparency, accountability, productivity, accessibility. That's the good work many of you have done in local communities, and we're very grateful. So you can see that if we were here in any other year, we wouldn't have yet reached what's called Joint Rule 10, which is the day by which all legislation has to be disposed of. We wouldn't have reached it because you wouldn't have demanded that we work a little quicker. So you did demand that. We are working more quickly. And now committees have finished their work largely, and bills are moving into their destination committees. And that could be into a Ways and Means or a Rules, or into a destination committee like Healthcare Finance. So it's called disposing of bills quickly, efficiently, and there's, as a result, a lot more opportunity for you and for us to do good work that benefits Amherst.
I want to underscore here the hearing piece that's up there, because one of the modifications that were made in this past session, and as a result of COVID, is that we now have virtual participation in all hearings. And that means that you don't need to find a vehicle, pay for gas, drive 2 hours, find parking, pay for parking, lose a day of work to be able to testify for some random 3-minute period in the course of a day. This is huge for Western Massachusetts and for Amherst. And a lot of folks from our community have taken advantage of it. I can't stress it to you enough. I know in the past people have asked, Lynn has asked in the past, does it matter if we're there in person or if it's virtual? And from the legislature's perspective, they're both equally as powerful. So you don't lose anything by doing virtual. And in fact, I would say it's sort of it'll help to underscore the importance of that option for the legislature, the more people use it. But that is really critical. Committees accept testimony on bills up until the time they leave the committee. So even if you missed a hearing, generally speaking, unless the committee has set a different rule, there's still time to submit comments in writing. So for those of you who are looking at bills that may still be in their committee, whether it's on energy or education, if it's still in the committee and you want an opportunity to testify, you can. And if you're not sure what to do, you should reach out to Joe and I, and we can help direct you.
Absolutely. And I will say kudos to Amherst. You show up, and you have since we were elected. And what you're saying and doing is critical to making Boston more receptive. You can go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Do you want to go?
So we are starting by the calendar year, but not really starting in terms of the budget for this coming fiscal year right now. So as Joe mentioned, though, the session is 2 years and the legislative session is 2 years. As you know, we're responsible for creating a budget every year. And the work starts before January, when the administration starts to look at what they can, what their needs are, what their priorities are. Then the administration and the legislature, and you're going to jump in on this because Joe's vice chair of Senate Ways and Means, so she'll have great insight into this process. But the legislature, both the House, the Senate, and the administration have to come up with a number that they believe is going to be the amount of revenue that we collect as a state. It's called the consensus revenue. And as you know from writing budgets, you need the revenue number so that you know what the maximum is that you can spend. We can't deficit spend either. We're not the federal government. So the legislature and the administration comes up with a consensus revenue. The governor creates a budget based on that consensus revenue and what her administration, our departments are saying, and her secretariats are saying they need. And she presents this to us at the end of January, which she did last week. And so we have her budget. That kicks off a series of hearings for Ways and Means on each topic area. Each secretariat gets an opportunity to have a hearing where they get to defend the governor's budget before the legislature. And when I say defend, I mean defend, because sometimes the legislature will say, why did you pick that number and not this number? Why are you going with this program and not that program? If you have ever seen Joe at the education hearing at UMass Amherst, you've seen her sort of interrogate the Secretary of Education in terms of Chapter 70 funding and other needs of our communities. And so that kind of back and forth happens. And then because it's a money bill, the House goes first in the budget. So we start to do our budget in April. We finish at the end of April. We pass it on to the Senate. They do their budget by the end of May. It'll be different than ours. We have to come together and agree on a unified, identical budget. We do that through a conference committee. And once we do that, we send that to the governor. Then she has an opportunity to say, I love it. I'm signing the whole thing. Never happens. Or she says, well, I love it, but I don't really love this part. So she might veto a couple of pieces. And then we still have an opportunity to override her veto. And then by August, end of July, hopefully by the end of July, there'll be a firm budget in place.
Just like the legislation flow chart, Mindy and I want you to see this as a chart of where you're powerful. You're powerful at every step of the way, especially duly elected colleagues, right? Our constituents are all powerful, right? They tell us what they like and what they don't like. But the legislature listens particularly to duly elected colleagues when you speak on behalf of the town. So for example, in the fall, I bet you many of you weighed in with critical agencies, right? Or weighed in through advocacy groups like MMA or STAM to these agencies that are putting their budgets before the governor, right? Every step of the way, we really want to invite you to raise your hand and say, hey, put in an idea for me here, or I just put in an idea and I want you to echo it, Joe and Mindy. So this is, the more we work inside, outside, the more we work with your power, shoulder to shoulder with us, we are better. So Mindy mentioned the consensus revenue, that's always in December. And this year, all the experts plus the administration and the House and Senate figured that the state revenue is going to grow about 2.4%. And that may sound okay to you. At least we're growing a little bit, right, in a very tough time. But when you add inflation to that, when you add the fact that healthcare is growing much, much more quickly than that, when you add federal cuts to critical programs like Medicaid, SNAP, and when you add a potential loss of federal revenue along with those cuts, we start to look like a budget that isn't going to grow just a little bit, and we'll figure it out. So what we have right now before us in the governor's proposal, and she's done, her first pass, but like Congress, the president's budget comes out and everybody goes, oh, okay, all right. And then the House does their thing and the Senate does their thing. But what the governor's done is you see that she's fighting back on some of the revenue loss that is in the big brutal bill. So she's trying to shield Massachusetts from some of those losses. They can be as high as $665 million. And she's also trying to figure out how we allow healthcare to rise like it must, in part for people no longer covered by Mass Health, but in part because the whole sector is getting more expensive. And then how do we keep some programs going? Again, this is her shot, as Mindy said. The held by topic areas, this is a place where you're particularly powerful. One, because you get to come to a hearing if you want to. And, you can certainly come to the Western Mass hearing. But really also you can tell us what you want us to ask at these hearings. Hey, I don't like that. That's not going to be good for Amherst. I want you to press on this particular issue, housing, Chapter 90, you name it, we can ask questions on it on your behalf and get you answers. And these hearings are real. This isn't like a polished little performance. Budgets change as a result of us raising questions and cautions, talking to our colleagues, pressing the administration, and all of the stuff that isn't in front of the cameras behind the scenes. We've seen dramatic changes in budgets, and that's good. That's as they should be, right? We should hear from the people. The legislature hears from the people. And I think we'll stop there. Yeah.
Just one more thing. I want to underscore that your advocacy becomes our advocacy. So, your stories, your experiences, the impact on Amherst through your eyes becomes how we frame our advocacy in Boston. And so I can't really underscore enough when it comes to the budget, because especially this year, there's going to be a lot of pulls. There's going to be a lot of people not happy, but yes, yes, yes. But we need to know what's the most important thing for Amherst. What are the priorities for Amherst so that we can advocate? We may not win, but we can try. But our trying is really tied to what we hear from you. Next slide. So in Massachusetts, we have a funny little quirky little government thing that's called home rule petitions. I'm not going to get into, do I support or oppose home rule petitions? They're just a thing. There are some issues that towns need to go to the state to get permission to do. And so the way they get permission to do it is they do a home rule. Some towns and cities do home rules, like a lot of them. A lot of rural communities actually seem to have a lot of home rules because they have fewer people to make up all the jobs, I think, that have to happen. You might have heard about some of the home rules that Boston has wanted to have that they have not been so successful in. We have 3 home rules. Home rules start with you. The town council decides it wants to do something. It needs permission from the state. It has to develop a home rule. And we've gone through the process with Amherst. You know, you create the legislation because it becomes a bill. You pass it on to me. The home rule starts in the House. I actually pass it to the clerk and council. They review it to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. As soon as that happens, it gets filed, and then it goes through the legislative process. It'll get a hearing in a joint committee if that's what it's needed. And then the House will vote on it. And if it passes, it goes on to the Senate. We have 3 home rules. We have an act relative to the implementation of the charter for the city known as the town of Amherst. This is the ranked choice voting home rule. We're waiting to see what happens. I'm not hopeful that it's going to advance, but I'm letting you know that we're waiting for it. You can still put in comments since we're waiting for the report. We also have an act establishing a real estate transfer fee upon the transfer of property in Amherst. The decision that the committee is going to make on that bill has been extended to February 20th. Senator Comerford has the bill in the legislature that makes this a local option where local towns don't have to go in for a home rule. There would automatically be a local option. That is not yet passed, so these home rules are needed. But the home rules are necessary until that happens. And the third one is an act authorizing extending local voting rights for lawful permanent residents residing in Amherst. And that has been sent to study. And study is the euphemism that the legislature uses for not going anywhere this session. And there were a couple of other towns that had this. I think Northampton had one. They were all put to study. Next slide. Want to take it? Go ahead.
So we don't have to spend too much time because you'll hear us reiterate all of these things. But so your stories are important. Your voice, your organized voice together is important. Your voice as individuals are important. And that is what we take. So you directly go to the legislature. You can go through us to stories we tell our colleagues, what we say on the floor. And then together we affect policies and budget. And we communicate the concerns of the region. I also want to pause and just note that Amherst has also led a successful, most recently a successful statewide advocacy. Lynn, you worked with folks in Deerfield and then created a statewide coalition that actually led to a never seen before in the state. Mindy and I certainly worked inside hard, but extra funding for the library, right? It wouldn't have happened, right? We needed to build a state. It couldn't have happened if it was just for Amherst or Deerfield. And so Amherst said, well, you know, all right, we'll just do it, and organized all the libraries in partnership with Deerfield. And then the legislators did the same inside. And we went to our leadership and we went to the MBLC, and MBLC felt the pressure inside and out. They were willing, good people too. But we did this thing as a result of the COVID pandemic. It sparked here. And that's the kind of stuff we have to do. We have to build people power. We have to build structures and initiatives that are bigger than individual towns if we are going to win. You did this again. Lynn and town council members and school committee members came to testify at a recent education hearing and showed up and pounded it out, made people very uncomfortable. It was very good work. And around education funding, right? Yeah, and it was taken very seriously. Amherst's participation was noted by the people at DESE and the administration because it was so pointed and so effective. So you have a history of doing this. We say yes to you doing it.
I want to stress this piece that Joe mentioned about organized voice as individual council members, as a council, and this other piece with other towns that are in a similar situation. I cannot reinforce this enough as we approach, because I know this is one of the issues that folks have wanted to talk about, as we approach looking at the end of the implementation period for the Student Opportunity Act and the potential for looking at Chapter 70 and what it needs to happen to it so that towns like Amherst start to get what they need. It is going to be more important to link arms with other towns in similar situations so that it becomes a statewide movement, just like the statewide movement for the Student Opportunity Act. This needs to be a statewide movement. So I want to kind of foreshadow this, kind of sow the seeds a little bit, that your leadership doing this kind of organizing is going to be even more important in the coming years. Next slide. So we just thought we'd take a moment and just say like what committees we have, which is interesting and kind of funny because you'll see this is mine, but Joe's is like, 3 slides long. But I am very honored that this session, I was appointed to be the House Chair of the Joint Committee on Mental Health, Substance Use, and Recovery. These are issues that I've worked on before I got elected, and they're really complicated, hard issues, but they really impact individuals, their families, providers, institutions, towns. And so any bill that the House clerk has determined should be in mental health, substance use, and recovery gets sort of shifted there. Clerks are like traffic cops when it comes to bills. They sort of direct them into individual committees. And so we'll deal with anything from involuntary commitment to harm reduction, to psychedelics, and to provide, parity issues around insurance.
You are a most excellent chair.
Thanks, Joe.
We can go to the next slide. Oh, this
Oh,
is your bill.
sorry.
You forgot.
Oh, okay. So it's I have many different bills, but these are just sort of kind of identified sort of maybe the top ones. You can see on my website, the legislation that I filed. I try very hard to support my colleagues who have wonderful bills to go through. So I do work hard on my bills, but I work just as hard on other people's bills. But some of the bills up here are HIP, to put it into statute. As many of you know, this is the program that matches SNAP when people buy fresh produce from vendors like farmers, food pantry support, hunger-free campus. We're fighting to get livable wages for human service workers, not only because they deserve it, but because it's a real worker hiring and retention issue for services that many of our residents need. I work on climate and environment issues because I represent Amherst, and Amherst is a leader on climate and environment. I have some bills on public health, transportation for the disabled, and education and college affordability. Those are just some. There are some that connect to immigration, which we'll talk about later, but just wanted to give you some highlights.
Perfect. These are the committees that I'm on currently. Again, different chamber. Stop it. Stop it. Different chamber, different committee load, right? So I am the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Higher Education. I asked to go back this year to this session to this committee because the legislature, thanks to the Fair Share Amendment and a willing House and Senate, is really making some transformative investments, but also policy changes in the higher education space. I think it's really a moment for us. I am also the Vice Chair of Ways and Means, and I'll just say that I'm also on steering and policy. That is the Senate's response to the current federal administration committee. It was a sleeper committee. The Senate president sort of brought it up out of the ashes, And it's what she is calling protecting our people, defending our values. And so that's where I've been working on things like reproductive care, gender affirming care. We passed a Data Privacy Act. We passed a book ban, and we will pass immigration reform, and then a bunch of other things are coming out of that committee. So we can, and then like Mindy, I ask for committee assignments based on who I work for, right? So, we know climate is a huge thing in Amherst. Of course, I asked to be on a climate committee. Of course, I filed climate bills, education, healthcare. It's because of the people I represent. You can go to the next thing. And here's some of my bills. We're going to talk some about the municipal building bill. We talked about the transfer fee pilot is on the agenda this evening. And of course, education, right? Everything from rural schools, Chapter 70 reform, special education, and then a number of climate bills, healthcare. In the healthcare space, I'm more in the primary care and the funding and affordability. And of course, I represent hundreds of farmers. And so I do a lot with Mindy on food security and then for farms. Next one. Next slide.
So Joe and I are both very committed, not only to representing our districts in the town of Amherst, but recognizing that we have to link arms in Western Massachusetts, that our voice needs to be louder and more insistent. It has to go further. It has to go all the way to Boston. And so we work a lot on regional efforts because we realize, especially regional efforts that lift all boats, because we know it's also going to positively impact our community, but it also is good for the region. And what's good for the region is good for Amherst. The more we can bring economic development to the region, the more we can bring population to the region, that's good for us. So these are some of the regional efforts that we've been involved in. And this is just a smidge, to tell you the truth. So education funding, I'm going to let Joe talk a little bit more about that. I'm just going to jot down a couple of things here. So we're both involved in bringing rail to Western Massachusetts, not only the north-south, but particularly the west-east. And so there, as many of you know, there are two routes. There's a northern route and there's a southern route. One goes from Boston, Greenfield, North Adams. The other one goes Boston, Worcester, Springfield, Pittsfield. We want both. And people have said to me a lot of times, which one do you want more? And I say, whichever one goes first. As far as I'm concerned, we're a little different this way. As far as I'm concerned, in Amherst, it's equidistant. Greenfield, Springfield, as long as it gets people to Boston, I'm good. And so we worked really hard to get rail, and it's an uphill battle, especially now because the federal government is not a willing partner in anything, and we need them to be a partner when it comes to rail because it's very expensive. But we've been tracking it and monitoring it and pushing State Department of Transportation, and they're doing their work. They're working hard. Joe has really been leading the effort on both, but particularly on the Northern Rail. So I want to leave a little space for you to talk about that. We're also very strong advocates for regional transit authorities and bringing more money into the community. And if you noticed recently, the PVTA has now started some pilot programs with cross-county routes, really important, and microtransit, really important for people in Amherst, particularly people in Amherst who work in Greenfield or people who work in Northampton and people who work in Franklin County. So this is, I think, huge. I'm going to stop there and let you pick up, and then I'll do tourism, arts, and culture.
You do that because yeah.
So last session, I happened to be the House Chair in Tourism, Arts, and Culture, which was a wonderful experience because it opened my eyes to how Amherst plays a really critical role in this space and how tourism, arts, and culture bring its own revenue stream into our town. It not only brings visitors, but those visitors sometimes become permanent residents. Those permanent residents bring kids, they go to our schools. So it's all a great cycle, but they're also particularly important in this day and age to be supporting arts and culture. And Amherst, in fact, gets a pretty significant chunk of funds through the local cultural council, a little bit more than some other small towns, I just want to point out, which is great. They have an excellent track record distributing the funds, as well as our museums and galleries.
I want to focus on naming and transforming structural equities just to give some visibility to some of this sort of behind the scenes work. So Mindy and I and some of our other colleagues are pretty active with the Healy Driscoll administration really calling out what we call sort of fossilized inequities, right? When we both got elected, we heard, oh, those people in Boston, they're never going to pay attention to us in Western Mass. There's nothing we can do. And both of us, I think, share this, that of course there's things we should do. I mean, really, you should send us packing if we're not trying to shake up the status quo. And I will say the status quo is getting shaken up. And so together with colleagues, directly with the governor and lieutenant governor, we're naming problems with formula funding that really disproportionately does not see a smaller population and resource it equitably. We're naming barriers to having competitive advantages with grant formulas. We're naming the lack of voice from Western Massachusetts on boards and commissions, or the vacancies, say, for example, in our courts. And we're naming the disproportionately lack of access to some services like mass hire, which doesn't get a fair enough slice of the pie. And grant by grant, line item by line item, service by service, we are going for it. And it can be weedy and it can take too long. But these things are changing as a result. It's not just Mindy and I. We have we have a circle of really good colleagues, and we have a willing administration, and we have town government telling us to do better. But we have to imagine together that the status quo must be shattered. It is not working for us in Western Massachusetts. And if the Healy Driscoll administration says it wants to govern 351 cities and towns, we have to help them. So we see this as a service. They don't always receive it like a service, but you should know that we're going for these inequities that have too long held us back.
And some of them seem like nothing burgers, like appointments to boards and commissions. However, there wasn't anybody from Western Mass on the Board of Education. Now there is. Recently, there was an Amherst resident who was appointed a judge. Western Massachusetts on the bench. So it matters. It's that matters, making sure that funding comes to, formulas sort of take into account our unique situation. All of it matters.
Amen. Next one.
So in addition to the budgets and the line items that we will be voting on, in the past, I don't know what will happen this year because the budget is going to be so hard. Individual legislators have the opportunity to put in local investments, otherwise known as earmarks. And we both have brought earmarks to Amherst over since we've been elected, since 2019. We do everything in partnership. So when the earmark comes into Amherst from the budget, it reflects both Joe and I. And so that could be anything from, a new piece of equipment to the fire department, money to the Amherst Survival Center food pantry, money to CRESS, which isn't quite an earmark, but it's in the second piece. So it's all partnership in order to get more money to Amherst, with the belief that not only is that money going to serve the public and serve a need, but if that money's going into serving a need, it frees up other money in the budget to deal with a different need.
And like we were saying before, the structural inequities that are baked into some of these direct formulas like UGA, unrestricted general government aid, there is no formula to UGA that makes any sense at all. We're calling that out. We have to redo it, right? Chapter 90, it used to go out with a formula that was road miles plus economic activity plus people, some combination in that algorithm. Well, we don't have the economic activity like Boston. We don't have the population, but we sure as hell have the miles, right? And so now a hefty portion of that, it was a third last year, we hope it to be 50% this year, are going out road miles only. So that's the way in which, it's terribly boring maybe to hear about, but I feel like, but it is the way we can change inequity. Same thing, MassWorks. MassWorks didn't have a rural carve out. It had a match that our towns couldn't have. MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Program. There was no rural program. The scoring for the grant didn't work for our communities. And so little by little in the guts of these, we're getting to that. And then the program funding, you see here, just some of the things that we've talked about with Amherst over time that are also in what are called, some of them are in cherry sheets, that you look at. Some of them are in grant programs that, you know, nicely benefit Amherst. So
So a large part of what I think we both think is a priority is not only representing Amherst in legislation, representing Amherst in the budget, but really trying to secure funding for Amherst in what Amherst has decided is their priorities. So sometimes if someone would come up to me and say, an individual, a resident, you know, I don't want you to fund X, Y, or Z, but the town council has agreed that it's a priority, I'm following the town council.
Right.
Because you're the elected body. So it's my job to try to get funding for the kinds of priorities that you have set. So in that respect, I think we're both pretty proud that we were able to get such a significant amount of money for the new elementary school. And Kathy, your leadership on this is just,
unbelievable.
Thank you. And as well as the library. And I want to hat tip to Joe on the equitable approaches to public safety and CRESS.
These are just examples that we, we're just naming. Want to go to the next slide? I want to get to questions. Want me to do this quickly?
Go for it.
So you all, many of you care about what's happening now. I would say venture everybody cares about what's happening nationally. So the legislature has before us bills that are important. Mindy should talk about the PROTECT Act, which was just filed by the House. But let me just say that the governor's acting through executive order and legislation. The House has already acted. Mindy will talk about the Senate is acting. And so those of us who have been feeling the urgency to do more of a line of defense to protect our people and curtail ICE, you'll see some good movement from the legislature. I don't think it's a question of if anymore. Thank the Lord.
I think the main thing we have to work on is expedited action on the part of the legislature, which is going to be challenging. So these are the bills that are kind of being considered. I just want to point out the Immigration Legal Defense Act is to make sure that there is legal representation for immigrants who are being arrested or detained by ICE. Even though that act has not passed, last year the legislature funded it at $5 million. I expect we're going to fund it again this year. In the governor's budget that she just submitted, it was there for another $5 million. It may need to be more. We'll have to see. But I strongly suspect we're going to continue to fund that. The PROTECT Act is a bill that was just filed by the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, which really looks to protect courts and justice systems. So it makes courts a safe space where ICE cannot come and arrest anybody without a judicial warrant, but it also standardizes some detention kind of characteristics. Governor Healy's executive order and bill seems to take the Dignity Not Deportations Act and the Safe Communities Act and part of the PROTECT Act and a couple of other things and wraps it all up in one big bill. It's really quite substantial. It also makes protected spaces, not just the courts, but it includes houses of worship, schools, daycare, and hospitals and medical care settings. And it includes a provision that I'm particularly fond of, which would require out-of-state National Guard deployments to have governors consent before they come into the Commonwealth.
It's your bill.
It's my bill, but it's a provision in her bill. I'm happy to give it to her. And she also has so the Safe Communities Act is really about not creating contracts or agreements between ICE and local police departments. They're called 287G agreements. Her bill, her executive order puts that into effect immediately. And so doesn't wait for, does so-and-so like it? Does so-and-so not like it? Done. The executive order went into effect immediately last week. The legislation is attached to a supplemental, which is actually kind of clever because we have to do a supplemental. And so that's making its way through. Amherst, questions?
We'll start with pilot. So when I talk about pilot often with Amherst, we're talking about state-owned land, and we're talking about more of a natural and working land. So I have a bill which the governor she enacted as well. She is a gutsy, proactive governor, and there is now a pilot commission set up The pilot formula is just like Chapter 90, just like Chapter 70. It is wildly inequitable for Western Mass communities. It's wrong in two ways. One is it basically compares our land value to the land value of Nantucket. Ridiculous. And it penalizes us for not having land value that's growing at the same kind of rate the state average would. And then it doesn't say anything. It's silent on ecosystem services, which is the work our land is doing here, our streams, our forests, our farms. And so this commission, and I get to have a seat on it, is going to look at that. And I'm really delighted by it. I know Amherst wants to talk about pilot when it comes to higher education as well. But I will say that, you'll see pilot on your cherry sheet. That number has to be much higher. And that's the commission that I'm on. And we'll need your advocacy, frankly. There'll be Western Mass hearings, and I would imagine Amherst should bring it loudly and pointedly to this commission. I'll be cheering you.
Before we go on, I just want to say this is a list that's taken from a list that Mandy Jo gave us. But I don't know, do we want to go through this or do we want to open it up to questions?
Yeah.
Let's go through it first and then we'll open everything up to questions.
Okay. So I'm going to start with Chapter 70, but then I'm going to give it to you. So Chapter 70, as you know, is the formula that's used to fund public education and to give money to towns to fund public education. We have a lot of issues and concerns with Chapter 70. It's not good for Amherst. It's actually bad for Amherst. It's not that it's not doing good things, it's doing bad things. And so it needs to be fixed. And there's lots of little pieces to it. Here's the context for looking at fixing it. And the reason why before I talked about the Student Opportunity Act. When we first came into office, at that point, the controversy or the issue around school funding in Massachusetts was that the kind of education you got depended on what your zip code was, that there was a real racial equity piece to education funding that needed to be corrected, and it needed to be corrected fast. And so the Student Opportunity Act was sort of developed to try to shift funds to districts that were resource poor to be able to lift up their schools. And we did that. It's a 5-year implementation period. The legislature doesn't like to have too many plates in the air at the same time. And so when I bring up, Chapter 70 needs to be reformed. We need to look at it. We need to open it up and review it. What I hear from colleagues is we need to let the Student Opportunity Act run its course, and then we'll go back and see what else we can do. That happens next year. Okay. Listen, so we have a year. We have a year to organize. And I really want to stress this to Amherst. This isn't like, oh, so they're not doing anything. It's like we have to connect with other communities that are in a likewise situation. And we need to start to strategize. There are pieces to the Chapter 70 formula that are being sort of changed, modified. Joe's had a very big hand in trying to look at the local contribution piece. That's what Amherst testified in recently. Each piece right now has to be dealt with as its own piece because of the reluctance to deal with the whole piece. But we have not lost sort of our vision on that it's a systemic problem that needs a systemic solution, even if in the next year we have to continue to chisel away at the pieces of it. Did you want to disagree?
No, I think certainly we have to organize right now. I have some hope that we are going to be able to nail this in the budget, but we'll see, right? So this is, different perspectives, different chambers, right?
Different chamber.
So Chapter 70 is basically like a clamshell. And so we're doing the bottom of the clamshell, and that's the target local contribution. That's how much the state says to Amherst, this is how much you have to pay. That hasn't been opened up in 18 years. A lot has changed in 18 years. And so the commission, again, Amherst is influencing this, is looking at things like the impact of education spending on Amherst's overall fiscal picture. It's having an outsized, very painful impact, right? That's what the commission is looking at. Chapter 70 is what we sort of more think of when we think of education spending, And that's what the state sends Amherst. Now, the truth is, we've put in tens of millions of dollars more into education spending in the last 7 years. They have not disproportionately benefited Amherst because, as Mindy said, it is rewarding high poverty locations, communities of color, immigrant communities, because we're trying to level the playing field, right? That's a good thing, and I think we all can agree. But Amherst has a particular situation. We have declining enrollment, and we are rural in some of our sending districts. And neither one of those things, and we have, like everybody else, we have high special education numbers everywhere. So these things were not taken up in the last Foundation Budget Review Commission. That's why Amherst is not being seen. Because if you're in hold harmless, which is a static payment, because we have declining enrollment, again, like about 85% of the district statewide, right? So that's the truth of this. Amherst is not unique in this. We have to look at the formula so that it can see the problems and the opportunities we have here. And that's what we're trying to do. And so, we are going to keep pushing as hard as we can on this. And I think we should be wholly intolerant of inaction. And I know you are. So I think maybe we could go to questions.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Counselors, any questions? Kathy?
On the line that said Chapter 70 and school funding, the charter formula is devastating to us, and anyone who looks at it says it was never fair. It's not just not fair to Amherst. When we lose a kid, you lose $30,000 worth of expenditures, and you can just look at it. Is there any hope? And this is building coalitions with other towns, because now that Esser's gone away and the things that bolstered us up a little bit so you didn't see it, you can really see the drain in our resources.
So Mindy and I filed a charter bill that took a long time to put together, because it is to find the right way to upend the formula and try to be fair to Amherst. Just took some time. So we filed it. It has been reported favorably, not in the same state that we put it in, but it would have gone directly to addressing the formula. So when Amherst sends a child to charter, as you know, you send also the money that Amherst spends above foundation. So that's sending state money, it's a pass-through, plus Amherst town money. We think that's wrong. We think that the charter schools should not get Amherst money. If the charter schools need that, the state should pay. So that provision did not make it out of committee. But there are a number of provisions to try to curtail also the governance, make it more transparent and accountable, and certainly the funding. I will say this space, organizing wise, is very churny. There's lots of different ideas there. I don't think there's an coalesced outside public pressure campaign that, and I'd love to work on this, I'm sure we both would, with the group. So we've been meeting with a lot of groups, a lot of people trying to, it doesn't have to be our bill, but it has to be a bill to work on charters. We always say, both of us, we don't have any right to tell a family or a student where they go. Our business is to try to make it work for both the schools in all locations and the communities that send the students. And right now it's just not, right? So we're fighting it out over the frozen aisle. And shame on the state. And I'm really bummed our bill is not going to go further. So we do need, we're in the space, and we just have to keep pushing.
Thank you. Councilor Kendall-Martin?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation and for coming here. I have a few questions, so I'm just going to say them all so I don't have to keep raising my hand. So my first question was just really quick, and it was to ask you if the home rule petition about ranked choice voting, 4189, did you say that that was kind of hopeless? Because I couldn't quite hear you. And then, and if so, why is it hopeless? And then my other questions are about immigration and protecting immigrants. So I did see that Governor Healy filed some legislation, and you said that that process takes a long time. So when you say long time, can you explain like how much longer it might take, considering how urgent it is? And if you think that that there are things that we can do locally in the meantime, things that we can pass that are similar protections while we're waiting for that to pass at the state level. And then just another quick question about the Safe Communities Act. Can we, so that means that we won't have any more 287G agreements, but can we do something to get rid of the agreements already in existence?
I'll just take that last one. There's only one agreement statewide, and that's one person at the DOC. That's it. So it would prevent any new agreements.
Thank you.
But Min, you may want to talk about the.
So I didn't mean to say that it was hopeless, the home rule, but it hasn't advanced from committee for the past couple of sessions. And the circumstances have not changed, either the way it's been presented to the legislature or what the legislature has done to change the outcome. And ranked choice voting legislation has not come out of that committee this session. And I think part of what we're up against here is that there was a statewide referenda on ranked choice voting early on, and it didn't pass. And so the legislature looks at that as well. They don't look at it as, but Amherst wants it. Can we do it for Amherst? They look at it as the residents in the state don't want it. And we've talked about strategies for changing that. And maybe if this doesn't advance this session, we can revisit those strategies for next session. It may not hurt, right? I mean, if we find out what we've been doing. In terms of immigration legislation taking a long time, the good thing about the governor putting her legislation on a supplemental is it can't just not do anything. She needs to get that. She's indicated that she needs the supplemental budget by April. She needs the money to cover expenses. So that's the time frame, and I think it's going to be faster. In the House, they've set up meetings with members this week. I'm going in on Wednesday for the one that I'll be in to talk about what we want to see with immigration legislation. And I'll be reporting what my constituents have told me, which I agree with, is they want all protections as quickly as possible. So I think it's not going to be a long time. Yeah. Oh, it'll definitely be this session.
Oh,
Yes,
100%.
absolutely.
Yeah, and the Senate has indicated, since the governor filed it's in a supplemental for the Senate, that means we'll go second because it's a money bill. And the Senate president's on record in front of a whole lot of people, saying we're going to take it from the House. So the House will add its stuff. The governor put out a bill, the House will add its stuff, the Senate will add its stuff. We'll smush them together, and that's it.
The despicable, outrageous, horrific behavior of ICE in Minneapolis has been just the incentive to move the legislation fast.
Thank you. Anna.
Okay, I was just trying to put star to differentiate my questions from my notes. So if I start just not going with the question, and I have several, if that's okay. So the first is because of, when we think about Chapter 70, because of Hold Harmless, we would need to see Chapter 70 shift by over $3 million in order to impact Amherst. You mentioned charter a little bit. Is there anything else that could shift that would change the picture for Amherst and education funding beyond just Chapter 70? And do you want me to just go through all my questions? Okay. So on that same vein, when you say to connect with other towns to advocate, and you talk about the Jones Library as an example where that advocacy happened, could you go a bit deeper on what that looks like in its most effective form? So is it telling our story and where our challenges are? Is it coming in with proposed changes that would meet our needs? Is it coming in with numbers? Where is the most effective route there? And then sort of branching off of that, similar question as we think and support our community members in engaging with you all and engaging with these bills as they go through. Sometimes it can be intimidating to make a comment at a legislative hearing, or even email legislators that aren't the two of you. Some folks might feel like they don't know how to advocate. And Mindy, I think I'm recalling in the past you talked about the importance of telling your own story And I'm wondering if you could share kind of what are some effective ways that folks who might not feel like they have every single piece of data on the entire conversation can still engage effectively and get do something and help do something. Kind of what is the best way for them to reach out? Petitions, stories, data. Again, kind of what do you recommend there? I have two more and then I'm done, I promise. So the next one's about pilot. A couple years ago at the Mass Municipal Association conference, I sat in on a presentation from the state auditor about pilot formulas. And the state auditor was proposing a shift in the pilot formula that would actually lower the contribution that Amherst would get. And it was in an effort to do what you talked about, which is very valiant, and to, support some of these more rural towns. And I think this is a bit of a question, bit of advocacy, but when we think about the benefits of land and we think about state-owned land, education is a benefit, education is a public good. So how are we considering that along with preserving natural resources? And I hope that that comes in, and I'm curious how you're framing that when you go into these discussions. And then lastly, hopefully this is a small one. Right now, the council is talking a lot about our charter and talking a whole lot as we received recommendations from the Charter Commission. I heard your answer about ranked choice voting. Do you think that if the language of the way that it's written in our charter is what's throwing it, is it worth us really picking apart that one and revisiting that particular language and submitting a new home rule on that?
I may say something not popular. I do think it's worth looking and seeing if the legislation should be changed, if the home rules should be changed, based on other home rules that have gone through that have also addressed ranked choice voting. And I think that my recommendation to the charter, although I don't think this is a slam dunk in terms of getting what the town wants, would be to make a section in the charter, the new charter, around ranked choice voting that is very affirmative. Like we will do ranked choice voting, or participatory balloting, however you want to call it, as an affirmation. I think in the first charter, it was, we'll set up a commission and study and investigate doing it. And that's not, we're doing it. So, and I'm just saying there may be a difference because the legislature has to approve a new charter. So if the legislature approves a new charter that says we will do it, there might be an argument that go for it.
And to clarify, we're not submitting a new charter to the legislature fully. We're just doing the changes within the community that we're allowed to do. So this would be
But
a
still,
separate
I think changing the language to be more affirmative would be important. And I also think at the same time, and I'm more than happy to help identify what other places may have gotten bills that have moved, so we can work with their legislators in their towns to see if there's certain language that should be done differently. I just want to talk a little bit about what you said about the intimidated and around advocacy. I just want to share with you that, like, I think last session, 2 fifth graders from Crocker Farm came to the State House to testify on a plastic bag ban. And they just spoke about their experience and their interest in doing it. And it was really quite moving, not just because of their age, but because they had some data and they had some, research that they had done in their classroom. But really, it was about their feeling about what they thought they would lose if they didn't have the ban. And my feeling in talking to folks, and I'm going to speak for Joe and I here. We obviously didn't know you were going to ask that. I know that we both would be interested in coming to anything that the town council wanted to sponsor to help people identify how to be advocates at the State House. But the thing to remember is the most compelling advocacy is stories and personal impact. There are academics who will come and present data, and there are researchers that will come and present data. But I think that with legislators, it's really the thing that moves us is empathy, and that's people's stories. And so I'm happy to talk with anybody. I'm happy to meet with anybody to sort of go over how it's going to be. If we know in advance that somebody's coming in to testify, I'll accompany them. And so hopefully trying to make it comfortable, but it can be intimidating when you're in a room sitting at the table, for sure. May also be a reason to do it virtually.
The sweet spot undeniably is one fact, one story, head, heart. legislators can't resist it, right? Like we're like butter. It's just true. It's absolutely always been true, and it's the same everywhere. You asked about advocacy. What I mean by advocacy is public pressure, sustained, pointed public and social pressure. And that is part of what we are on the hook for out in Western Massachusetts. And what does that look like? I don't know. I think it looks like standing in a field with 2,000 people saying SOS, and having a drone snap a picture and sending it to the globe. I think it looks like throwing up videos of town councilors and kids in schools reading statements on the wall of DESE in Everett and inviting the globe. I think it looks like real organizing. That's what I think. That's what we have to do if we really want to break through. You asked about hold harmless. Amherst has one of the largest hold harmless buffers in the state, as you know, right? And that's a sustained decrease in population. It doesn't have to be, your population is a separate thing, but what the formula sees is a whole other one. So a re-look at opening of chapter 70 would allow us to look at the construct of hold harmless. Would also allow us to look at special education funding, which is a real thing statewide. We could look at everything that we are out here. Again, the last Foundation Budget Review Commission in 2015 looked at a set of things that I think we all believe are really important, but they didn't look at what we are. And so therefore the formula is not who we are. It doesn't see us in the same way. So we have all these add and stir kind of stuff, right? We have rural aid and we have some more money for literacy and we have all these pots. And of course we've got to fight for the pots of money, but it's not the systemic solution. That's what we need. And that's what we'll get when we open the formula. The target local contribution is going to be, it's going to look at systemic fixes. But if you think about like a percentage, it's about 25% of Amherst is paying, maybe 30%. But we could do better, right? We have to go for the rest of the 70, and that's the Foundation Budget Review. And the Foundation Budget Review could also act on charter schools, right? It could act on all of the things that it didn't act on before that are still part, are very much present for schools like ours. And then pilot, the auditor has an idea about pilot, but remember this commission is not gonna, they're not gonna take Auditor DeZoglio's idea. I mean, maybe she'll come testify, but it's gonna have to work for 351 cities in town.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just mentioned because you're facing away that a lot of folks have come into the room to advocate behind you as you've been sitting here. So just as a heads up, because I know you can't see them.
But we need to put Boston on buses. Like this is what it's going to be, friends. We're going to have to build muscle together.
Thank you.
It's us together, Western Mass.
So Anna, you asked though about what does it look like when other towns joining other towns? And I just want to say, I think of what it looks like is, counselor to counselor calling up and saying, I understand you have this issue. We have this issue. Can we talk about this issue? Have you talked to your, and then start organizing with them, seeing if they've notified their legislators. And once you tell us they've notified their legislators, then we go to their legislators in the State House. And we sort of say, we understand that we're getting calls from our constituents. How can we move this forward? That to me would be the best way to be effective.
Thank you. Councilor Ryan.
Just want to follow up briefly on Councilor Kenna Martin's question related to immigration. It was very heartening to hear that the governor's executive order, hear about legislative actions that are taking place at your end. What advice, if any, could you give us? What can we do as a council effectively in response to what's going on? Do you have any thoughts about how we could be effective or help?
There's a couple of things that I have on this. And I appreciate not just the question, but the motivation for the question, because I think it's a difficult point because we want to be able to be effective without putting our neighbors at risk. And, so that sometimes means we may want to shout from the rooftops how we feel about it, but that may also threaten people. And I'm aware for myself of trying to avoid whatever puts somebody else at risk, and being aware that it may not put me at risk, but it's going to put somebody else at risk. I think that there's two things that are available, to tell you the truth. One is, and it's going to sound a little hokey, but I am a big believer in them right now. Joe's heard me say this. One of the most important weapons we have is unity and caring for each other. Unity and caring for each other. And the council has an opportunity to model both and to be active on both. And I think that's really super important. But I also think the training, the training, oh, sorry, I thought maybe, somebody else was listening. But there is a training on Wednesday night at First Church, and I think there's a overflow training happening a couple of weeks later at Grace of Pitt. That's going to talk about how to be a witness and how to be an observer. And I think that's something that we all could be, that's a good opportunity for all of us to do something proactive, is to be ready to be a witness and to be ready to support our neighbors and show them that we care about them without putting them at risk. I think that's super important. But, I'm also, I personally, I think food drives are a way to do things now, accompanying people to the survival center, food pantry. I heard that some families weren't comfortable going, and so people are going to chaperone them directly to the survival center. Those are important things right now. For me, ICE feeds on division and hate. So our weapons of choice are unity and love.
And I would just say, not every community is Amherst statewide. So our leadership is not hearing yay from every community. So the extent to which the council wanted to affirm the protections, and send it to the governor, send it to the lieutenant governor, send it to the Senate president. I'll speak only for the Senate president, but the speaker, that's, you're an elected body. We take you really seriously. And then I go, hey, these are the people I work for. I can't go home, friends, unless we do this quickly. Let's go. So that is one of the ways in which we channel you to make our point that we share. We happen to share your urgency desperately. And so you tell us to do it. You tell our leadership to do it. Okay.
So that would translate to supporting the legislation that was on that slide.
Or the governor's bill, or
All of it.
anything you said.
All of
Actually,
it.
anything you said.
The governor's bill is now legislation before us. So
Act, protect immigrants and curtail ICE. If you said that sentence and sent it, that's all you really you don't have to be experts in it.
Thank you. Councillor Breivik.
So I just want to quickly acknowledge that in addition to all the wonderful advocates for education who are out tonight, there are also a lot of folks in our community who have been working and organizing to try to put together real concrete action around immigration to and ICE and protecting our communities. And so I just wanted to, I have one follow-up question on that front, and then I have a question on education. I'll circle back to that. And I'll ask both together here. So according to the guidance on Executive Order 650, the governor's executive order, the Department of Corrections, the 287G agreement with ICE that you also mentioned, this remains intact and unchanged by this executive order. So I'm wondering if you both support continuing this agreement and why you think the Healy administration is not ending this agreement with that executive order. And I ask that to the sentiment of a lot of the folks in our community who feel like some of these bills and actions on the state level or legislation on the state level is not really going far enough or not targeting the real, some of the real actionable pieces of, what could really, really protect us and protect the folks in our community. And then I'll just on education quickly,
it's my understanding that releasing funds from the fair share amendment would be incredibly impactful for our local public schools. So I'm wondering what is stopping the legislature from releasing these funds, and, or at least if you could just share from your perspective where this is at, that would be great. Thank you.
So I think the legislation Safer Communities is all 287G agreements, not just future ones. I can't speak for the governor on why she chose to limit it, although it seems to me that by limiting it, she's also saying we're not going to have any more 287G agreements. But I can't speak for her. I can speak for the Safer Communities Act includes all. So, and we're both co-sponsors and hoping that that becomes the leverage that we then can modify the governor's bill. I'm just trying to see if there was another one on immigration, fair share. So as you know, fair share has to be spent on both transportation and education. And the division of that is something that can vary from year to year. And I can't tell you now how we'll spend that fair share because that becomes part of the budget process. But I can tell you a lot of us will be talking about using that to help municipalities pay for K through 12. I think I can speak for myself. That's going to be one of my avenues for advocacy is we're going to want some of that funds to come back to K through 12.
On fair share, it's really important that we understand that fair share is flowing. Hundreds of millions of dollars, billions actually, are flowing. And Amherst is benefiting from fair share. It's with transportation and with education. You know, the universal school meals, that's fair share money. The free RTA, cross-county RTA, that's fair share money. The work on rail is fair share money. Early education is fair share. UMass is getting a ton of fair share. The issue that we have to focus on is that the foundation funding formula does not work. And so Amherst is losing, and this is really important, and it's weedy and it can be hard to understand, but to say that Amherst isn't getting fair share is actually not to recognize that, in fact, in the state's eyes, because of something called a hold harmless buffer, which Anna referenced before, Amherst is actually getting $3 million more than if you were just going to get a per person formula, because you've been held harmless, which means you don't get less last year than you get the year coming. And it's really important to understand that you have to change the formula so that it rewards the communities that we are. And that could be, maybe it's a really super frustrating thing to hear, but this is why we, last year, 2 years ago, we supported the school committee in bringing Tracy Novick, who I hope is just my pitch. I hope that the council, again, if you will, I wouldn't presume, but the school committee and the council, because knowing where to push and how sharp you can get in there will make your advocacy stronger. And we need the razor sharpest advocacy. So fair share is coming, right? It's going to be part of the special education circuit breaker in the governor's budget. Special education circuit breaker is getting a huge boost. That's fair share. That will help Amherst. So is it enough to forestall the pain? No, it is not. That's why we have to change the formulas. But the issue is that chapter 70, Amherst on a scale of 1 to 12 is always around a 5 or a 6. And that's measured by things like poverty, by the number of English learners, and the formula that is rewarding a higher density of those has Amherst at a 5 or a 6. So instead of going up meteorically, like some of the gateway cities are, it's a gradual. And so this is like takes more than we can do. I need like a dry erase board. This is your hold harmless buffer. Again, 3 million more than the state thinks you would get if they were counting your students. And chapter 70 is making its way up. So in fact, you're getting more than chapter 70. It's not enough because hold harmless goes up 1 or 2 or 3%. every year, and your expenses are going up much higher than that. So it's like death by 1,000 cuts. And that's not okay, which is why we're really going to the mat again and again to open up Chapter 70 and change the formula. Remember, it's that clamshell. So one part of the clamshell is open. This part of the clam, that's 18 years old. This part of the clam, and that was by legislation. We did this. This part of the clamshell is not open yet. And so we're doing all this constellation of stuff. More money for rural, more money for special education, more money for transportation. And we're trying to do it so that we can keep our schools alive. But we need a systemic fix. And that's what it is. And then in terms of this, the executive order, my understanding, I'm not the governor, but my understanding is there's one person in the DOC. And we have to remember that person is facing toward the Department of Corrections. Now, Mindy and I have a similar belief in decarceration and, root causes of incarceration. So, but it's really one person facing the cadre of folks who are incarcerated currently. That's that person. Where that person is facing, they are not facing toward the community. Now, again, these are our family members who are incarcerated, so I care about them deeply. And I understand about over-incarceration. I understand about all of that stuff. But it's just really important for us to understand where the person is looking. They're not a police department looking in communities, which is now going to be prevented. And again, none of our communities have 287G agreements. In Western Mass, they don't even threaten to do them, right? We are not the issue statewide. It's much more of a conservative approach. So, and as Mindy said, the legislature gets to act now. The governor gave us something, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you. Lynn?
First of all, thank you for being here. And your comments and what you've shared with us, I think is absolutely the best example of the fact that you hear us and how you work with us. And that has been true since both of you were sworn into office and we started the council. I also want to recognize that the chair of our elementary school committee is in the audience, as well as all of the other advocates here for education, which will be one of the major focuses of this council and of our schools committee. I'm also just want to not repeat questions that have been asked by other people, and especially around immigration and so forth. Not that I'm not interested, but they've done it. There are two different pilot programs that exist. The one that you're looking at on the commission is the public one. The one that has the state-owned land,
Yeah.
exactly. And you know my position on this about higher education, 29 public higher education institutions. People come to them literally every day. They use our roads, they use our facilities, and they don't pay taxes. So we'll be talking more about that, I promise. The second thing is, though, the pilot formula that has always been dead on arrival in the legislature is around nonprofits. And I don't mean small nonprofits. I mean large nonprofits, most of which are either they're either private higher education institutions or they're healthcare institutions. And in fact, every time it comes up, the healthcare lobby in Boston stops any conversation that we're going to have about it, even though Massachusetts is a very, very big private higher education institution as well. And I have to say, in our town of Amherst, we probably would say, well, one institution might be able to afford something, but the other one might not. Nevertheless, in Amherst alone, over 25+% of our land is owned by higher ed institutions, and we have no leverage. And we need the legislature to help us have that leverage. And yes, you do know that I know how to form a coalition of people, and we will. Okay, just letting you know.
Good.
Any response?
I mean, that's a mic drop.
Okay. Then I will move on to Andy.
Yeah, just echo thanks for being here. And I was going to raise the same issue about state-owned land and the fact that there are 29 different institutions across the state that face the same thing as we do, which is having land that's off the tax rolls and demands on services. So that seems like a potential coalition that would be out there. School funding formula. It's seemed to me for years that Northampton and Amherst have been in similar boats where we're of a certain size and a certain demographic that we don't benefit from the formulas that other communities might. So maybe we should be teaming up with them to start a nucleus of storytelling on state funding, because certainly there's activity in both towns that is based on the recognition that we don't have enough funding for what we want to do. And then finally, I'm really interested in finding new revenue sources. Housing is a big source of tax revenue in this town. And the governor has a priority of developing more housing and supporting more housing and economic development. I don't know if you have any thoughts about what resources might be coming our way that would, or that could come our way to support more development of taxable housing, whether it's for students or seniors or workforce housing. And I guess that's my question.
Well, I just want to just comment a little bit on it, Andy. I think that, first of all, our ears are always open for anything that's happening in Boston around resources and support around economic development and housing. Me for Amherst and Granby, Joe for her whole district. I do think that the last thing that you mentioned, I forgot to write it because I was listening so intently. I was writing all these notes for it about, let me just think for a moment. Housing, economic development, workforce housing. So one of the things that we've talked with both with UMass about, which the chancellor has seemed, this chancellor has seemed very eager to do, is workforce housing on non-academically used UMass Amherst land. That doesn't necessarily have to be like right in our backyard. It could just, wherever you put it, just as for two reasons. One, not only because it's housing, but because it's housing, it relieves pressure on the Amherst market. And that's actually the main concern here, is trying to sort of allow the Amherst housing market to breathe a little bit by putting workforce housing on the UMass campus. And I think we're going to see some of that happening in the next couple of years.
Yeah. If there's some way that we could make that taxable at the same time that it's, because there's a housing piece and there's a
So,
revenue piece.
I think this is it's an inside outside, but we're not, both of us aren't inside or outside. We're just here. So there's us working with the university to try to make that happen. And then I think there's the town work to make sure that happens, whether it's through strategic partnership agreements, other kinds of conversations, so that it's kind of a dual 1-2.
And then on housing, specifically, the governor filed a $5.1 billion, and we passed a $5.1 billion affordable housing bill. And two things since then. One is we worked together to put into law now a dashboard so we can track every single dollar that is spent from that $5.1 billion, every single dollar. And that's down to the town and down to the county. And why did we do that? Because we have no reason to trust, and you have no reason to trust us, that we're going to get our fair share. That's part of the work. Number one, that's number one. Number two, there is a housing choice program. That's like the overarching program that then drives all these other housing programs. At the top of that is basically an algorithm. We're going to talk a lot about algorithms that value certain things. We changed the algorithm at the top, and it now says that it has to equitably resource geographic and also population equity. That's for the first time. It's never had that before. And we changed the housing choice program. It didn't work for our communities. Amherst was way ahead of it, but because Amherst was pushing, we saw the gulf actually between Amherst and the rest of our region. So what we tried to do is make it easier for all communities in Western Mass to come in, and make it easier for Amherst, and then score it appropriately so that not only can you get into the program, but you can win. And Amherst has done an excellent job. in housing, both courting, housing development, and actually getting money, public money. Can we do better? And can, we meaning us as your servants? Sure. And I think we're all in. This governor, Kristen Ellico, her Western Mass director, they actually have to build. And I think we know that either here we build or we die, right? That's what we're looking at in Western Mass. We either build population or some of parts of our region will go actually out of business in about 50 to 100 years. That's all studies, right? This is existential. The governor is facing a lot of pressure out east. People in out east, they do not want to build land, right? She has to take them to court. They don't want to build housing like we want to build. So it makes us good partners. We also value a good intersection between climate readiness and housing. We value open land and housing. So I trust us to get it right for Amherst. Again, we will never say to Amherst what you should do. Amherst says to us, we'd like to get some housing grants, and we then go get them. We're trying to set up the structure so that Amherst wins when Amherst is ready.
Thank you. Jennifer.
Thank you both for being here. This has been one of the most riveting council meetings in my more than 4 years on the council. So thank you. But so I did want to just pick up on what Andy said is, we're not, as you well know, in Amherst challenged for housing that caters to the student housing market to be built. We don't have to court that, but we are very challenged to have housing to serve our non-student population. And I think because we have not been able to build that kind of housing, a lot of workforce housing, that we have seen our non-student population decline pretty precipitously. So we have a community of, it's getting to be under 14,000 non-student residents, and we have to support our K through 12 schools, which we would love to have more families living here and sending students to those schools. We have infrastructure and services, yet our three, we all know, largest employers don't pay taxes. So as we look to work with our peers, on the municipal level, I'm wondering if you also look to other states, and like in Connecticut, they have a statewide pilot program where the state actually has a formula, and they take a certain percentage of the tax revenue that's lost from public and private nonprofit institutions, but very much private colleges and the state colleges, and they actually pay those municipalities for public institutions. Communities that host them get 43% of what they would pay, those institutions would pay in taxes from the state. And if we had anywhere near that from UMass, we could fund our schools. So, I don't know, many of us be happy to work with you on that, but that's something that's been in place in Connecticut for a number of years.
Do you have that legislation, or do you have that statute?
I will get it and get it to you.
You
Okay.
can send it. I'd be super interested
Okay, yeah.
in seeing that. I didn't know Connecticut had that.
And
Thank
then
you.
based on what, no, I didn't, but then based on what we said earlier, and then it would be not only us working together with you, but maybe you reaching out to the other 28 host communities to also engage them in it.
Right.
This has to be a statewide coalition, because the first thing that we're going to hear from our colleagues is the people move there because it is a college town, right? As almost dismissing an opportunity to help. So we need to sort of reach out to the network of other host communities that may also be feeling that crunch to be able to work with us.
Wasn't there just an article, I think in the Boston Globe, that Northeastern,
Yes.
they reached an agreement with the city of Boston. So they're,
The city of Boston would be a very good place to do it. UMass has a Boston campus as well as private institutions.
As would Cambridge.
Cambridge has it, I think.
So Sam.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank both our representatives.
Sam, can you pause for a second? Sean, is there a way we can get that louder?
If he wants to start talking, I'll bring the volume up as he talks.
Okay, Sam, go ahead. It's just very faint in here, so we just want to make sure we can hear you.
I can shout. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'd like to thank both our representatives. I found the presentation quite informative, learned some things that I might not have known, and it's very apparent to me that both of you have demonstrated, aside from great knowledge and advocacy, approachability and relatability for not just our council, but for our community. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time and coming here and being in front of our town and our committee. I think it has made a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That is all our hands. So thank you for giving us for well more than the hour. That was very ambitious to get everything done, but I want to thank you for being here tonight to give us this update and all. As Sam just said, it was extremely helpful to all of us. For the public, we will be moving on to the rest of the agenda, which is 2 quick things and then public comment. For the counselors, we would normally take a break, but our public has been waiting a very long time. So I would like to move without a break to that so that we can get to the public comment portion. The representatives and senators will try to remain for the public comment, but they may not be able to due to their schedules. So I just want to make that clear to the public that it is not that they don't want to hear you. It is all based on schedules. But there are contact information for the senator and the representative in that presentation they gave that is in our packet. So we will make sure that it can be found for everyone to see, and so that anyone that wishes to contact them may do so through that contact information that they have provided, and that we will make sure it should be in the packet. Yes. It's the last 2 slides, I think, of that presentation. So again, thank you to the senator and the representative for your presentation. We really appreciate the time you took to come here tonight.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the town of Amherst for hosting my office hours, everyone.
And I just want to say before we go, I really want to extend appreciation through you to your town staff. Amherst really has really dedicated public staff. We ask a lot of Paul Bockelman in terms of the questions we ask and our regular meetings with him and with council members. And then everyone we interact with is just remarkable. So thank you very, very much. And Kristen Ellico is here as a silent partner, the governor's Western Mass director. She really cares a great deal. So every minute spent building relationships with Kristen is a moment spent well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have technically announcements on our agenda. They are on the agenda. I am not going to read them, and we have no hearings, which makes us moving to public comment. Anyone wishing to make general public comment who is attending remotely, please raise your hand in the Zoom application now. If you are present in the town room and have not yet signed up over by the table, Sean's raising it up, please do so now. Residents are welcome to make public comments on matters within the jurisdiction of the council. The council will not engage in a dialogue or comment on a matter raised during general public comment. Public comments are not reflective of the opinions of the council. The First Amendment broadly protects individuals' rights to address the government, to speak, and to express themselves, including their right to say hateful and offensive things. I am generally unable to shut those commenters down under the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution unless their level of speech falls within an exception articulated by the courts, such as fighting words, true threats to a particular individual, harassment of a particular individual, or incitement of imminent lawless activity. If a question exists as to whether a particular speaker is engaging in unprotected speech, I must defer to the principle of freedom of speech. There are 4 hands raised on Zoom of people who wish to make public comment. Sean, how many people in the town room have signed up for public comment?
10.
10. With 14 commenters, each commenter will have 2 minutes to make their comment. We will start with people in the room at this point. So Sean?
The first name is Andrew Brace.
Andrew, please come on up, state your name and where you live, and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Andrew Brace. I'm the president of the Amherst DPW Associations. I'm here to make the town council and public aware that contract negotiations between the town and DPW have been going on for over 1 year now. Negotiations began in November of 2024 with an opening meeting. Following the opening meeting, there were 7 more meeting sessions. At the 7th meeting, the town's legal counsel suggested mediation as the next step. We are now 7 months past the expiration of the last contract, which expired July 1st, 2025, and we are entering our 4th and supposedly final mediation meeting scheduled for next week. The town states in its personnel procedure manual that the town seeks to provide a friendly, respectful, healthy, and rewarding place to work for its employees while maintaining employment practices that create safe, fair, equitable, and positive environment for staff to achieve their workplace goals. We take pride in assembling and retaining high-performing and motivated individuals who are dedicated to serving community members in an innovative and responsive ways. And we continually strive to be the public employer of choice in Western Massachusetts. Unfortunately, our experience in negotiations does not reflect the town's stated values. DPW staff provide essential services that keep the town running every day, including providing and distributing clean drinking water, collecting and treating sewage, handling solid waste, providing engineering services, and maintaining numerous parks, cemeteries, roads, streetlights, traffic controls, pools, and numerous trucks and pieces of heavy machinery. There are numerous challenges that the DPW has faced for the past several years, including an ongoing high level of turnover, difficulty retaining staff, regular vacancies and understaffing, and a significant loss of institutional knowledge. Lengthy negotiations contribute to uncertainty and make it hard to retain employees. These issues affect staff morale and impact service delivery to the town.
Please finish up, Andrew.
Okay, we are not asking for special treatment, but for a fair and respectful contract that reflects the work that we do and aligns with the town's stated values. I'm asking that the town negotiators align their actions with the town's stated values and work towards a timely and equitable resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Andrew. We will move on to an online Zoom sign up. Andrew Melnetchuk, please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live.
Hello, actually, this is Josna Reggae, Andrew's wife. I'm sorry that it says the wrong name. I live on Farview Way in Amherst. Heartfelt thanks to Senator Comerford and Representative Dome for the work they do every day to support our communities. State support is especially important in the current climate, where federal agents are terrorizing peaceful residents with no criminal records. Amherst is home to people from all over the world, and this diversity is one of the things that make it such a dynamic place. But I know firsthand that many townspeople, no matter what their citizenship status, are living in a heightened state of anxiety. I appreciate the steps that the governor has taken to limit ICE activities and to restrict out-of-town National Guard deployment in our state, but they aren't strong enough. Many members of the council will already be aware of a resolution that will still soon come before you, calling for federal immigration agents to be held accountable for violations of Massachusetts criminal law. It calls upon our state attorney general, our county DA, and our town police chief to take affirmative steps to protect the residents of the Commonwealth, Hampshire County, and the town of Amherst from the unlawful actions of federal forces. It asks them to investigate the incidents in which masked ICE agents have attacked, unlawfully discriminated against, and violated the constitutional rights of Massachusetts residents. And when appropriate, it asks them to initiate criminal charges against these agents. The resolution will give Amherst an opportunity to do something actionable, not merely symbolic, in calling upon the town to give teeth to their promises to protect us. When it comes before you, I hope you will consider it with all due seriousness. Thank you.
Thank you, Josna. Next one, Sean.
The next name is Vincent O'Connor.
Vincent, please come up, state your name and where you live, and then make your comment.
You want me to introduce myself?
Yes.
You need to. My name is Vincent O'Connor. I live at 175 Summer Street, apartment 12. We know ICE's tactics. We don't need to learn anything anew. We've seen enough on television to understand what is likely to happen if they visit us. Two components are necessary to successfully frustrate them. One, first is prior knowledge. There are local safe houses and run by groups that can hide people. The Jews of Denmark did not all sail to Sweden the night after they found out what the Nazis were to do. Some of them were held hidden for days, others were hidden for weeks, and some were hidden for months. So we need to know, and we need town employees who find out, and university employees who find out, to tell their union representatives to make sure the information gets out. We need to have, we have snow days. We need to have ice days called by unions. Well, the second thing we need to have is a local government plan of action. If the only use of local police is to disperse parents of school children who have been terrorized, teachers and children who have been kidnapped, or the neighbors of residents whose homes or apartments have been broken into, despite the fact that the DA says he will prosecute people who are arrested, we need to have a plan that will arrest people who engage in these criminal activities, even if they claim to be federal employees instead of the thugs, the armed and masked thugs that they really are.
Vincent, please finish up.
Yeah, if
Your time is up. so
if
you
the
need to
use of
conclude.
police, as I've described, happens, the administrative and political leaders of this town will be gone quickly, as will a police department who refuses to protect and defend the people who pay their salaries.
Thank you, Vincent, for your comments. Nina M., please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live, and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Nina Mankin. I live in North Amherst, and I want to start by thanking you all for your advocacy, particularly our state representatives, and for all of you for your difficult work. I have a child in 8th grade at Arms. My family's been in Amherst for nearly 60 years, for multiple generations, and I have watched our school district go from being the absolute best in the state to barely being above average. I know that catastrophic cuts are not just something that we as a community are facing, but I do ask you as town leadership to work out of the box and to think creatively to help defray these catastrophic cuts. And I am asking you to look deeply at the concept of parity across departments and question if this is in fact a formula for equity for our community. And I, again, thank you for all your work and your advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina, for your comment. Sean?
Next is Daniel Shapiro.
Daniel, please come up. And then state your name and where you live and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Daniel Shapiro. I live at 51 Rolling Green Drive, and I am a UMass student.
Can you speak closer to the mic,
Oh,
maybe?
yes, hello.
Thanks.
Hello, Amherst Town Council, and thank you for this opportunity. Like I said, my name is Daniel Shapiro, and I am here not only as a UMass student, but as a representative of the Sunrise Movement at UMass. For those of you who don't know, we are an activist and advocacy movement aimed at social and environmental justice, focused on making UMass a better place for all of its students and faculty, both to work and live, and for it to be better to the town that hosts it. And that is why I'm here today, to ask you to make a formal statement pressuring UMass Amherst to construct more on-campus, university-owned housing for students. I ask this because the situation for students is untenable, and the pressure it places on the town is untenable. In January of 2025, UMass put out a request for proposals seeking a developer to renovate existing dorms and to construct new public-private housing. As of December 2025, almost a full year later, there's been no updates, with the 2025 update to our campus master plan declaring the procurement process was still ongoing. There has been no progress. And we need more housing on our campus that doesn't put pressure on the local housing market. Our school needs to pull its weight. And their current plan for that is to build more public-private housing, such as the Fieldstone Apartments, which their cheapest room at the moment runs $1,603, which is $46 up from just March of last year. This is unacceptable. So we are hoping as a movement to get the town to put pressure on our school, because it would give us a further mandate to make sure that our school actually pulls its weight in this community. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Daniel, for your comment. Margaret, please unmute yourself, state your name and where you live, and make your comment.
Hello, this is Margaret Sawyer. I live in South Amherst, and it was really exciting to see this talk tonight. Thank you, Mindy and Joe, for being there. Jennifer Taub, I got very excited about the Connecticut formula. That was exciting to hear about. Let's do that. I just wanted to come because so many of these years that I've been living here in Amherst, we start the year with budget negotiations, and we hear about how there's going to be this shortfall for the schools and how it's inevitable and how there's nothing to be done. And sometimes I've also heard that the schools ask for a lot of money, that the schools are the department that, you know, has the highest increases, and it's not fair that the schools are asking for so much money. And, you know, as a teacher now in the schools, as of recently, I do feel the pinch and the worry about money. We, especially hearing that there's going to be this huge shortfall and people worrying about their jobs. Also thinking about the new school building coming and all the logistics that it's going to take to make that work, and how inevitably there's going to be unexpected expenses that come with change. I just hope that this year we can really try to do this together in a different way, where there's not as much like, why is this happening? Oh, the schools, like, how can we do it where we're listening to each other better? We're having a little more openness with each other. If we have to cut things, we're doing it all as a team, because we are all each other has right now. We're not feeling that backing from the federal government anymore. The state, we're lucky to have such good representatives, but it's, you know, we're a small town and we have to stick together. And I just want to feel that better in this budget here process coming up.
Thank you, Margaret, for your comments. Sean?
Next is Angelica Bernal.
Angelica, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Good evening, Angelica Bernal, District 2. So I'm speaking here on behalf of the steering committee of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, CPAC, to voice our deep concern over this year's projected school budget deficits. We are living in unprecedented dark times. A year ago, when we came to speak to you, we flagged concerns about the Trump administration and their attacks on our most vulnerable in society, focusing our concerns on individuals with disabilities. We raised our concerns about dismantling of the gains that disability advocates have fought so tirelessly, and the infrastructure in the Department of Education that provides for the funding and right guarantees under the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, or IDEA. We are now a year into this full-scale attack on our educational system, and particularly on special education. Thousands who have upheld IDEA have been fired, and federal funding that our schools depend on is gone. We have been speaking before you for 4 years in a row now, each year asking and pleading that you prioritize public school spending. But I hope this year the stakes are clearer than ever as to why public education in Amherst must be our #1 priority. Our local school system, public education, particularly special education, is in crisis. Years of cuts have left us hanging by a thread. We feel it directly as families of students with IEPs and 504s. We see it in the ways in which positions that are critical to our students are the first to face cuts. And after being the first on chopping blocks for 4 years, we have nothing left to give. Last year alone, we lost a significant number of teachers and paraprofessionals. We have long been out of compliance with federal and state laws, but along with the legal liabilities of these system failures and the financial waste they cause as we resolve these crises through litigation, we ask that you take heart of what is most important here, our students who are Amherst residents and deserve a quality education. We are now a nation in crisis, a crisis on the backs of our most vulnerable members of society. And I hope this year you will dispense with the old rationale, because frankly, we can no longer afford that. And we ask instead that you follow the moral imperative to
finish
fully
up.
fund our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. Ellen JG, please unmute yourself, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hello, I am Ellen Jedri-Gadera, and I live in South Amherst. I'm a parent of 2 elementary age kids, and we have family roots here. Thank you very much to Representative Dom and Senator Comerford for being here tonight, and so for working so hard for our Western Massachusetts communities. And thank you for the Town Council for listening. The financial situation facing our public schools in Amherst and across the state is dire. In Amherst Pelham, we are facing a $4 to $5 million budget shortfall. By some estimates, this could result in more than 40 staff lost this year alone between these districts. Our schools cannot sustain these losses. Our children cannot sustain these losses, and we as a community cannot sustain these losses. School funding needs to be the high priority in this year's budget. The town of Amherst has had a recorded surplus of between $4 and $6 million over the past 8 years or so, yet our schools make cut after cut after cut. We know the town cannot fix the problem alone, and we need the Commonwealth to change the way it funds our public schools. But Amherst does have the ability to provide more funding and to save some of our critical teaching positions and incredibly valuable programming. In 1749, Benjamin Franklin wrote in a letter that an investment in education pays the best interest, or as it has been paraphrased, the only thing more expensive than education is ignorance. Education is expensive, but it's also critical to our community and to our country. And public school systems like Amherst are an investment in our future, our children's future, and the future of our country. And today we need this investment more than ever. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ellen, for your comments. Sean?
Next, we have Layla.
Layla, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Layla Mishavbek. I live in District 1. And like many families, I moved my tri-national family to Amherst for its bilingual public school, its reputation for inclusivity, and for its legacy of activism against apartheid, fascism, and discriminatory structures, both locally, nationally, and abroad. I understood this town to be small but mighty, and somewhere I wanted to raise my kids. I understood this would be a place that recognizes how systems of oppression are connected, and that global policies impact us locally, that protecting our most vulnerable populations protects us all. And just to respond to a point made earlier by our reps, while I really appreciate your work at the state level, I'd like to both acknowledge, as someone who has been protesting and using my voice, that our stories often fall on deaf ears, and many of us have experienced a government that is extremely selective and limited in how it responds to overwhelming public pressure. So I'd like to urge each of you on the council to use the power that is already vested in you to protect our community, our values, and our civil rights here by advocating at the state level, absolutely, and we will have your backs, but also by using surplus funds to respond to the funding crisis in our public schools, and by using every measure at our disposal locally to protect our public spaces, our students, and every member of our community against ICE and government suppression of dissent. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Layla. Jennifer Curiel, please unmute yourself, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jennifer Curiali, and I live on Woodlot Road, District 5 in Amherst. I have a fifth grade student at Fort River. I'm here tonight to ask you to do whatever you can to fully fund our schools at level services. As you know, the schools are facing unprecedented budget cuts this year. Since moving here about 10 years ago, we moved here because my husband got a job as a professor at UMass. I have watched in that time our school system suffer and decline year after year. I personally have watched family after family, neighbor after neighbor, choice out of our school system into neighboring public schools or charter schools or private schools. As our schools decline, those who can leave, leave. And this is utterly unsustainable and wrong. Each student who leaves takes district money with them. Our schools need to be robust and attractive to attract families and to stem the flow of people leaving and to give our children what they deserve. We cannot afford any more budget cuts. As we all know, these are very dark times, and what is happening in our country is terrifying. My only hope is in a town like Amherst, Massachusetts, where we profess to value equity and education, that we take the steps necessary to ensure that our children inherit and create a better world than we have right now. And I think the only way to do that is through education. I ask that you please allocate some of the town's surplus to save our schools. I understand that this is not how it's usually done, but we cannot proceed with business as usual. We can't do it the way we've always done it. We are in different times. We have to think outside the box. We have to make hard decisions. We have to do things that are difficult but necessary, even if it's not the way we normally do them. We need to fully fund our public schools. Please do what is necessary and ethical, even if it is difficult. And I thank you so much for your time and for your service to our community.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your comment. Sean?
Next is Lisa.
Lisa, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hello, my name is Lisa Pierce Boniface, and I have lived at 30 Harris Street in Amherst for almost 20 years. I appreciate the presence of our representatives in the Senate and Congress. And I just want to say that I have been a long-lasting participant in the public schools here. My daughter graduated from Amherst Regional last May and is now studying in New York City. I urge the council to prioritize educational funding at this critical moment. I have been an English as a second language teacher in the Caminantes dual language program at Fort River for 4 years. Each year I find more demands piled on because of cuts from the previous year's budget. With the cuts to paraprofessionals, librarian assistants, permanent substitutes, and essential specialists, the teachers and administrators who remain must cover the loss. The new era of Trump policies has posed additional burdens on our families and school personnel. Teachers and school administrators are becoming first responders to families at risk of deportation. Reports coming from the National Association of Educators describe Minneapolis public school teachers as reaching out to the immigrant community in unprecedented ways. Amherst educators do much of the same and must get ready to do even more. Currently, we gather groceries for vulnerable families, we collect outerwear for chilly conditions, and we keep a careful eye on families who are absent from school. In the process, we are learning that many families do not receive SNAP benefits, and so we are encouraging students to eat more breakfast and lunch at school. The news of family members being taken away from ICE is a reality in Amherst, and I fear we are not preparing well for the same challenges that Minneapolis faces. The heightened level of anxiety discourages families to be involved in our schools' activities. I want to urge the town council to prioritize the work educators extend beyond the school and into our communities. We are stretched too thin, and I fear we will snap under the thumb of ICE.
Thank you, Lisa, for your comments. Jason Dorney, please unmute yourself, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hello, my name is Jason Dorney. I live in District 2. I want to start by thanking our state representatives for their presentation tonight and for their hard work over the years supporting our town and our region. I'm a father of two elementary school students. And once again, we've come to this time of year where the school funding battle starts. And these funding shortfalls are projected to be even worse this year than previous years for both the elementary district and the regional district. And I am just I'm imploring the town council to, at a minimum, fund our schools at level services. And while that's not ideal, I do think it is much better than actually cutting positions. I'd also like to ask that rather than just funding at level services, you designate surplus funds to be used for closing the funding gaps for our schools. Our schools are one of the most important resources that we have as a town, and we need to commit to providing them the resources that they need so that our children can get that great education that they deserve and that we want them to have. For too long, we've been resting on our laurels regarding the great schools that we used to have while we spent way more money on them, while simultaneously reducing their budgets. The state funding mechanisms, they need to be revised, but our own town funding mechanisms also need to be revised. We need to show that we value education in this town, that we value our children, and that we are willing to pay for it. So please do whatever you have to do to allocate some of this surplus funding to closing the gaps that our schools are facing. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. And please, thank you for considering reallocating some of the surplus budget.
Thank you, Jason, for your comments.
Next, we have Alex Lopez.
Alex, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
So my name is Alex Lopez. I live on Potwine. Really unfortunately named street if you're trying to sound serious. There's so much to be said about the presentations today, and I appreciate the little glimpse of hope in a world that doesn't offer much of it right now. And it also seems honestly somewhat disillusioned to be hoping right now. We're not talking about a rounding error when it comes to our school budgets. We're not talking about an extra shift when it comes to fully staffing our fire department. I think everyone in this room is strongly for educating kids and not having burning buildings. I just don't think a lot of people on the other side of this have taken accountability for the ways in which they've led us here. This isn't a new problem. This is an annual tradition in Amherst at this point, where we come back and we talk about the fact that we don't have enough money for our schools, we don't have enough money for our DPW, for our fire departments, and also, by the way, the ribbon cutting for the next building is going to be at what date? And so until we start putting money into the people here, there are no buildings in town that are going to protect us from ICE. There are no construction projects which are going to stop fascism. There are people who do that on a daily basis. There are educators who do that on a daily basis. There are kids who are standing up and going all the way to Boston to fight for their future and their ability to survive in a town that won't even give them the stability to graduate with the same opportunities that they entered school with. Their schools are shrinking. Their opportunities are shrinking. And they are still finding hope to try and move the needle forwards. So in a town where we live in the shadow of a $4 billion endowment, while we're talking about private nonprofits, where we live where 25% of our tax base is taken up and held hostage by higher ed institutions, which we can't touch. That's not us moving forwards in a collaboration. That's us moving forwards as other people are making decisions for us. And so I don't want to hand over my kid's future to the chancellor, right? Or the provost at another private institution. I trust the people in this room to come up with a solution and move us forwards. And part of that is acknowledging the fact that historically we have been making decisions which have led us here. We need to start investing in people if we want to have a future in Amherst.
Thank you for your comment, Alex. Casey Maloney, please unmute yourself, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hi there. I'm Casey Maloney. I live on South Pleasant Street in District 5. I'll keep it short because many of my fellow caregivers have already made outstanding comments about our schools and our plea to think of creative ways to get us to level services for next year. So instead, I have a very specific ask that the town think of ways of sharing specialized trades contracts, so electricians, plumbers, etc. When we think about ways to save money for the town overall, please look at where we can break down silos between these various sectors in the town, because I think that could be cost saving for the schools in particular. I also ask that you please prioritize developing a new MOU between the school district and the town and DPW on the building, property, and parking lot maintenance. Last week, I put in a C-Click fix for a sidewalk at the mouth of Crocker Farm School. And the DPW was extremely responsive, so thank you for that. But it was obvious that the Crocker property and the sidewalks directly abutting the school are in this gray zone of responsibility. And so watching kids struggle through like snowbanks at the mouth of the entrance of the school, arriving at school wet, just feels unacceptable to me. So if we can prioritize getting there with some type of memorandum of understanding between the school and DPW, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey, for your comments.
Next, we have Kathleen Mitchell.
Kathleen, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
I'm Kathleen Mitchell. I'm a District 5 resident. I'm here also to talk about the schools. And I'm so appreciative of all the work that our state reps and some of you have been doing to advocate for state change, but that is not going to help my kids next year. They only get one chance to be in 8th grade and in 9th grade. And I don't know what that year now looks like, given the budget that we're looking at. My ask would be that we try to figure out where the town of Amherst and our schools, including our regional schools, can find efficiencies that would help the town budget and the school's budget. If you look in the Northampton budget, there are many more shared services. They share IT departments, they share HR departments, they share facilities departments. Some of that is then billed back to the school department. You know, Casey was talking about the MOUs. The MOU between the schools and the town seems languishing for at least a year. You know, there's efficiencies to be found. There's things in the school buildings that the town needs and the reverse. So I just think it's such a difficult budget year. We owe it to everybody to try to see where we can work together. And I'll echo Margaret Sawyer's comment that I would like to hear a more sort of collaborative tone and a collaborative working together. Because at the end of the day, as kids choice out of our schools increasingly, we don't stop paying for them. They just get an education somewhere else in a charter school, a more privileged education, I would call it, with our money. So it's not really helping us long term to not fund our schools. And we hear the word death spiral, and it feels like that's where we are. It feels like that's what's starting. So I appreciate the opportunity to voice that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen, for your comments. Milan Clark, please unmute yourself, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
My name is Milan Clark. I live on Main Street in Town Center, and I am making my comment to ask for the council to support at the state level S41, H51, or H91, which is an act to modernize funding for community media programming. The administration has cut funding for the corporation for public broadcasting, and they're trying to kill PBS. So PEG stations, we do have an opportunity to fill some of the gap that is made by that. So if I believe it's a 5% assessment of streaming services, it's a fee that would be charged to the services themselves, since a lot of people are not getting cable anymore. So services are being reduced, or the amount of funding is threatened. So with that it's at the state level. So I just ask that we could get some advocacy from the town to be able to fund our operations at Amherst Media. That's all.
Thank you, Milan, for your comments. Sean?
Next, we have Deb Leonard.
Deb, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Deb Leonard. I live in District 5. Speaking on behalf of myself. I had a bunch of things I wanted to tell you about Chapter 70, and I think I'm going to stick with that. One of the things that I learned, and I'm always learning stuff about school funding, is in a DESE statement. DESE white page is attached to a Chapter 70 document. It says, after a district's foundation enrollment is calculated, it is applied to a specific cost rate in 11 functional areas to arrive at the upcoming year's foundation budget. That's not the relevant point. These cost rates are based on a model school budget developed by a group of superintendents and an economist in the early 1990s. Our state is using a model developed by a handful of people a long time ago, and I think it's really not working. How we are not irate, right? So we have money in this state, and we are not irate that we are using a Mickey Mouse formula to fund the future of our country. It is beyond. I don't understand how people can go to sleep at night and not have that discontinuity that bubble through in their minds. It's bizarre. Special education formula. The existing Chapter 70 formula assumes that 4% of our students have special education needs. Across the state, it's well over 20%. So in Amherst, it's well over 20%. It's over 20% everywhere. It is really hard for me to sit and listen to the discussion of fixing a formula that never really made sense in the first place. Using this, what everybody learns in math, y equals mx plus b, right? A linear graph with b as the intercept, m is the slope. So we have a whole bunch of m's that correspond to different categories of students. X is the populations of those students in those categories. There's no B, right? So we have this kind of student, this kind of student, this kind of student. There's no, like, you have a school, this is what you start with. So this formula, it's not even linear. I mean, it's because there's a lot of M's and a lot of X's. It's not a line. But when X is 0, B is 0. That makes 0 sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb, for your comments. Sean?
Last, we have Esther Azar.
Esther, please come up, state your name, where you live, and make your comment.
Hi, I'm Esther Azar, and I live in District 1. I am a public speaker. I'm a rabbi. This is what I do. And every time I come to sit before you all, I have no freaking clue what to say. Because I spent, since I lost the election, which I was very happy about, I have spent the past 2 months looking over the town budget, looking over the school budget, grappling with what we can do to save our schools. And I keep coming before you and speaking, and I'm struggling because I spend all day, literally, I spent all day trying to come up with the words to convince you to make different decisions. And I know that you're all working so freaking hard. I know. And I hear about the pie, and then at the same moment, I hear about $10 million or $6 million in surplus, and I don't really know what to do about that. I don't really know how to think about that. I know that we were all children once, and I know that we all had good and bad experiences in school, and I know that there were teachers that saved us, that got us here to this spot today. And without those teachers, we wouldn't be able to do the fantastic work that we do in this world. And I know that the fascism that we see in this country grows from shame that is developed as young children. I know that fascism grows from being harmed and no one being there to hold us and see us in our pain. And if we really want to change this world, we need to start with our youngest people. They are the most vulnerable in this system. They're the ones that they can't speak up for themselves. And you all sit here with an immense responsibility. And I know that I'm begging you to think out of the box. Just find new ways. There are new ways. We can find them together. I'm happy to help. I definitely want to help you with Connecticut.
Thank you, Esther, for your comments. Sean?
She is the last person on the list.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. At this time, we are going to take a 10-minute break. We will reconvene around 8:55. Please turn off mics and videos as we break.
On my own personal page, but I will. Well, thank you. Thank you all. What meetings? It's like. Okay. So I mean, we looked at the one I put out. She said, I put it in.
Oh, you're the, even you haven't turned your video on.
Not yet. I'm getting there. Sat down and did the mic first. Okay. No one stayed. So do we know where Andy is? Sam, are you still there? Excellent, thank you. And we have momentarily, we will have Alicia back soon. No, I know what happened to Alicia. So Alicia will be present soon. There's Andy. Okay. So we are going to continue with our agenda. We are on to the consent agenda, and so there are a couple of changes, I believe. So the following items were selected because they were considered to be routine, and it was reasonable to expect they would pass with no controversy. To remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion later in the meeting, ask that it be removed when I list the consent agenda items. The request to remove an item from consent does not require a second. Before I read the items, Athena, can I just confirm that we do not have the January 12th meeting minutes?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't wrong on that. Okay. So I'll read the items, and if anyone wants to remove, please let me know. The consent agenda includes the following items and the motions printed thereunder to approve them in a single unit. Waiver of Council Rules of Procedure, Rule 8.6 for agenda items 6A and 9A 1 to 2. 6A, adoption of the 2026 Spring Festival and Lunar New Year Celebration Proclamation. 8A, acceptance of public way, Paley Village Place. 8B, authorization of town manager to issue and proceed with a request for proposals for a ground lease at the Ruxton site. 8D, designation of governance, organization, and legislation committee to recommend appointments to the bylaw review committee. 9A1 and 2, I believe. Approval of town manager appointments to the Council on Aging as amended by removing Jolene Fong from that motion, and approval of town manager appointments to the Public Art Commission. And 11A, approval of minutes, January 10th, 2026 special meeting. That is the 4 towns. So the difference from what is in the motion sheet is the January 12th minutes are not ready yet, so they are pulled from consent and from tonight's agenda. And the town manager has informed me that Ms. Fong has withdrawn her potential appointment, so that he has asked that we remove her appointment from approval tonight. So that is why I said that a motion would be approved as amended by removing her name from the motion. Is there anyone that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda or has a question about those changes? Counselor Kennel Martin.
Yes, I would like to remove item 8D from the consent agenda, please.
The designation of GOL for, okay. I see no other hands. Oh,
Counselor
sorry.
Rooney's hand.
Oh, I'm on the wrong page. That's why. Sorry about that, Pam.
I do not want to remove anything, but I believe it's an opportunity just to ask a quick question and get it answered before we vote.
That is under our
So
rules.
this is a question for the town manager and or / the planning board for the Paley Village place acceptance. I had to ask myself, is there a special permit a site plan review permit issued for that development? And if yes, which I would assume, but if yes, was there a waiver on the planting of street trees? Typically, they ask to remove the construction of a sidewalk, they ask to remove, or they ask for a waiver on a walkway, and I did not see anything about asking for a waiver to plant street trees. There are no street trees on that development.
I think Nate Malay would be the appropriate person.
Nate?
Sure. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Nate Malloy with the Planning Department. Pam, I heard your question. I don't have an answer ready right now. So I know that it was a cluster subdivision, so it needed site plan review, and then there was also a special permit for setbacks because it is a cluster, so it's smaller lots in terms of the setbacks of the structures. My understanding is all the conditions of the permit were satisfied, and the subdivision plan was met and matches the as-built plan. And so I'm not aware that there was requirements for street trees and they weren't planted. They may just not have been part of the plan. And so typically if in a cluster, it's because it is smaller lots and we still have a normal roadway width, it may be that the trees were intended to be on private property, but those aren't typically part of the permitting. It's whatever is in the right of way and under control of say the planning board of the town. And so I can look into that, but as far as I know, there was no requirement and it wasn't missed. And so when this was looked at previously, over a year ago, we found that all conditions of the permit were satisfied. And no one discussed that as something that was missing.
I'll have to accept that. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, is there a second?
Second.
A motion. Thank you, Lynn. We will move to a vote. This is on the consent agenda. Counselor Breivik.
Yes.
Counselor Cano Martin.
Yes.
Andy Churchill.
Yes.
Anna Devlin Gauthier.
Aye.
Lynn Griesemer.
Aye.
Mandy Jo Haneke is an aye. Counselor Lord. Sam McLeod.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
And I don't believe Counselor Walker has joined us yet. Not yet. Okay. So she will be marked absent for the vote. It is unanimous 12-0 with one absent. So we move on to reading the resolution and proclamation. I am happy to let either Lynn or Pam read it if they would like to. Otherwise, I will read. The three of us are sponsors. Would either of you like to? Okay. Pam.
Thank you. It reads, now therefore we, the Town Council of the Town of Amherst, do hereby proclaim February 17, 2026 as the beginning of the Spring Festival / Lunar New Year and encourage all residents to join in the 16-day celebration of the Year of the Horse, beginning with a community celebration on February 8, 2026 at 2 p.m. when the UMass Amherst Lion Dragon Dancers will be performing traditional lion dances throughout downtown businesses to bring luck, fortune, and prosperity to Amherst businesses in the new year.
Thank you, Pam. I believe I see Nate still there. Thank you for hanging around for the consent agenda. That agenda item, I believe, just passed on consent, so I don't believe we need Nate anymore for the evening. So thank you, Nate. We are moving on to, as I figure out what all we've done now, Public Way passed on consent, the Ruxton property ground lease passed on consent. So we are moving on to item 8C, which is a request for information under Charter Section 2.8 Residential Rental Inspection Program. So I'm going to do an introduction and then I will Then I will go to Pam and Kathy. 2 meetings ago, Pam Rooney requested an update from the manager on the residential rental program, and Kathy Shane requested an agenda item for that update. In an attempt to standardize informational requests from the manager that are desired under presentations and discussions section of the council agenda, as opposed to the more simple update under a manager's report, I requested that the counselors make a formal request under Charter Section 2.8C, the section that allows the council to request information in the form of a memo or by appearance at a council meeting. As I explained to the counselors, using this section for these more in-depth updates ensures that a majority of the council desires to receive the more in-depth update and that the manager knows the scope of the update and the exact information requested so that the information that is sought is presented and ready to be presented. Since I believe that this is the first time the council is being asked to use this section of the charter in such a formal manner, I expect there may be some kinks to be worked out as we figure out how this works. So one thing I wanted to say is the question before the council tonight is whether it wants to receive the information requested, not to discuss the residential rental program. It is simply to determine whether it wants to receive the information requested, and if so, in what manner. The council has options, though all of them must, per the charter, identify the specific information it seeks. So the council can request the information in a memo, it can request an appearance before the council, it can ask for both of those, or it could designate a committee to be the place the manager appears or sends the memo, or both. I will attempt to answer any questions related to the use of this section after Pam and Kathy have a chance to speak to their memo, and if they desire to make a motion immediately, to make that motion. So now I'm going to move to Kathy and Pam.
Do you want to start or should I? I'll start. Okay, so I don't know whether everyone had a chance to read it, and maybe Athena or someone could put it up on the screen. But the motivation of this is a new program that we instituted on inspections, and then we changed the way permitting works a bit as well, including fees. So we will be in the 6-month plus status in a few months. So this is after 6 months operation. And asking for, in the memo, you'll see we've laid out why to ask. It's a new program. We've added inspectors, so we've expanded staff. We're assuming it will break at least even with revenues at least equaling or more than equaling expenses with some UMass money. So the memo lays out what has been the experience in both how many inspections, how is that going? Are they minor, are they major kinds of issues that are found that require reinspection? So we laid out a series of questions for an update information, and the way this is framed, it would be both a memo to us as the council and a presentation. And the idea of the presentation is to the extent there are property owners out there that have had experience, we could be getting public comments at the point we get the presentation. Both of us had assumed this memo would be from the council to the town manager. Right now it's from 2 councilors to the council. So we just changed that. Mandy asked us to change it. So right now we've drafted it, but we fully intended if anyone said you've missed something or I have no idea what you're talking about when you're asking for this, it wasn't going to be written in stone. But we drafted this in the format. And at first, my first reaction was this was awfully bureaucratic as a way to ask for information. Then my second reaction is we have had some presentations in the past several years where we asked for information, but we didn't say what we wanted, and then we didn't get the information we wanted. We were said, send some questions in advance, but don't send them to each other. So no one knew what had been sent in. So formalizing a bit, if we really want information, I think is a good idea. And after the first reaction of, oh my gosh, Pam and I did this, it wasn't that hard to do, is what I would say.
Pam?
Kathy covered it.
So I'm happy to take discussion before we make a motion, unless you guys, this memo was in the packet. I thought I checked it was 8C. Was under 8C. Yeah, and I double checked the public packet on Friday and it was there.
That's why I asked to have it put up, because I wasn't sure people would even, I wasn't even sure that people would realize what it was and why it was in the packet. But
If people have not seen it, I'm happy to take another 5-minute break for people to read it. Would
It is,
people like?
it is in the packet
Yeah, thank you for confirming that. I'm
and
seeing some.
my
mistake. Some
and has
hands
been.
that people would like to read it, so we will take another 5-minute recess so people can read the memo.
Counselor Walker's back.
Oh, thank you. Counselor Walker, while we do that, can you just confirm that we can hear you and you can hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So we're on a 5-minute recess to read the memo related to item 8C. Oh, yeah, Athena, could you just leave that up on the screen while we recess so that if they haven't seen it, it can be read or at least seen?
I just thought the public might be interested in to any, if people are still watching us.
Yeah, maybe just to the questions, the second page, Athena, so people can see what was requested. That's good. Athena, could you scroll past 4 to the next set that's past 4? Thank you. I believe everyone is ready to discuss, has a chance to read it. So we will move back into discussion on this topic. We do not have a motion on the floor yet. I'm happy to hear discussion on thoughts of decision on hearing this information, and if so, where and in what format. Counselor Ryan.
So I appreciate this. I think this is important. I'm happy to make a motion. I don't know whatever, perhaps the two of you have already figured this out, but my only concrete question, beyond saying I support it and I hope we act on it, is there a time frame here? Did I miss that? Is there, how long are we giving the manager to do this? Is that something that we've determined or can determine?
Do you want me to answer, Kathy?
The
Or Kathy?
way it's written right now, we'd want at least a full 6 months of operation. So when I looked at when the inspections actually started, it said fall. So I don't know whether fall was like November. So I don't think we put a date specific, but the idea was enough time that we would have some of this information. So it wasn't, we've left it at this.
So you want to make sure you have 6 months, complete set of information. That makes sense.
The thing, 6 months, if there's more than that, great.
Right,
but-
right.
But not trying to get it at, just a startup phase,
Does it make sense for us then to suggest that by such and such a date, we'd like to have this report?
So the draft motion that is in the packet says March or April. I will say that, but I'm going to ask Paul, given what Kathy just said, would that give 6 months of data since we're not sure when the inspection started?
Yeah, so I think the April date would most likely, we'd be able to meet that one.
Okay, so you'd be looking at April. Okay. So maybe we would change that to April or May. I'm trying to give a large frame because we have so much on our plate. Anna.
My first question was answered. Okay, so question number 2 was about costs to operate the program. Monthly annual costs to operate the program, including salary, health insurance, pension, and any other benefits and non-personnel costs such as cars. I'm curious if we're able to break that out given the relatively small size of the program, or kind of what data are we getting there? Or if we are happy to accept a lump kind of figure here. I'm curious. I think this is a question both for Paul and for Pam and Kathy. Kind of what are you looking for from that? Because it feels a bit nitpicky isn't the right word, because I don't think it's inappropriate in the sense of trying to figure it out, but I'm curious about the purpose.
I will go to Pam first and then Paul.
It's a lump number, just, basically what is the cost to the town for this program?
Okay, thank you. I'm more comfortable with that.
And Anna, it wasn't meant to be, we want to know precisely person costs, and it was just, I've always worried we only see personnel costs, we never see the fringes.
Mhm.
And if we're buying vehicles and we're paying for gas and operate, so it was some sense of a fully, the way the enterprises funds kind of do theirs, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I was concerned that you were seeking each of those things as a line item. Thanks.
And Paul, is that possible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I see no other hands. I will therefore make the motion that is in the packet with the change we just discussed. Pursuant to Charter Section 2.8C, that the manager provide the information requested in the memo from Councilors Rooney and Shane dated January 26th, 2026, regarding the residential rental program at a council meeting in April or May, date to be determined by the council president, and submit to the council a memo regarding the information 1 week prior to the meeting at which the manager or designated staff will appear. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Councillor Cano Martin. Oh, we're voting.
Aye.
Andy Churchill.
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gavier.
Aye.
Lynn Griesemer.
Aye.
Mandy Jo Haneke is an aye. Councillor Lord.
Aye.
Sam McLeod.
Abstain.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Councillor Ryan.
Aye.
Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
And Councillor Brevick.
Yes.
That is unanimous with one abstention. We are moving on to item D, designation of Governance, Organization, and Legislation Committee for recommendations of appointments to the Bylaw Review Committee. The motion is to designate the Governance, Organization, and Legislation Committee as the council committee responsible for recommending appointments to the council for the Bylaw Review Committee. Is there a second?
Second, Devlin Gauthier.
It was pulled from consent.
Second.
Thank you, Anna, for seconding. I did hear the second for confirming it so our clerk could hear it. Is there discussion? I don't want to put Councillor Cano Martin on the spot, but you did remove it. So I will give you, if you want to hear reasons for doing this before you want to speak, that's fine, and I can give reasons, but.
No, I guess I had some questions about it. I wasn't sure what the bylaw review committee was and who is it just counselors, or is it also going to be residents? I don't know. I just don't have much information about it. I don't know what I'm voting on.
So the Bylaw Review Committee charge is sitting in GOL right now for discussion. The Bylaw Review Committee is a committee that needs formed and started and instituted in years ending in 6, according to our charter. And so at the last meeting, we referred a charge for the bylaw review committee to GOL to determine and bring back a recommendation on the charge. So that would include who can be on it. What I will say is the charter prohibits an elected official from being on it. That is in the charter in the section. So it will not have current counselors on it. It could potentially have former. So I think the original proposal was residents. 7 or 9, I'm not sure what number, but we have not adopted the charge yet. But this is sort of, I guess, in some sense, then getting ready for adopting the charge so that things like the CAF, the community activity form, can be changed to have an item so that people could click it. So that, even though, so we can get some of those things in motion so that GOL as a committee can start planning for the process that goes into appointments and all. So it's sort of a proactive motion, even though we have not adopted the charge yet. Lynn.
Yeah, just a little further background. This was done prior to the council. Well, it was done based when the charter was adopted. And there was a very excellent committee of 3 people. They made recommendations. I think it took us almost 2 or 3 years to work through all of their recommendations. So I think it's important to know that the existing set of bylaws have been scrubbed very, very carefully once already. But this is now required with the charter. So it's, but it is a process. It did require a lot of expertise. Fortunately, we had a lawyer on there who who knew town law and who knew governance and so forth. And so it was a very good committee, but they did a lot of work. And then the council had to follow through on the recommendations. Hope that helps.
And before I recognize Andy, one thing I forgot to say is the council has a policy on making recommendations to multiple member bodies that the council appoints. CRC follows that policy for making recommendations for the ZBA and the planning board. GOL follows that policy for making recommendations for appointment to the finance committee, but we don't in those charges have any designated body to make those recommendations for these sort of ad hoc once a decade committees. So we have to designate a committee to do so, or the council does it on its own, including all of the interviews and all, and it is more efficient to designate a committee. Many people think that. So that's the decision. So Andy.
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of what the scope of the work is. Is it cleaning up to make sure that is it mostly sort of, making sure that the bylaws are clean, because setting policy, new bylaws or whatever would be our job, right? So what exactly are they doing when they're reviewing the bylaws?
So that would depend on when the charge is adopted, what the charge says, which we have not adopted the charge yet. So as Lynn said, the previous one, which was mandated by a different provision of the charter, really was mandated to look at making sure the bylaws complied with the new form of government. So there was a lot of proposed changes from select board to either town manager or town council, depending on where the authority should lie. But there was a lot of that last time. They did not have the power to adopt them. So it was a very extensive report that then the council had to make decisions on, do we make those changes or not? And some of them were done in big bulk if they were really just select board to something else, and others were not. The charter says that that all members of the committees are voters holding elective and not holding elective office, and the committee files a report within 1 year of recommending any changes to the bylaws which it deems necessary or desirable, unless an extension is given. So that's a very vague what the charter says. The proposed charge, which GOL will be reviewing and proposing a recommendation to the council for is things like raising public awareness of the review process, developing and feedback mechanisms, analyzing feedback prior to producing preliminary and final reports, reviewing, proposing, and reporting on processes, deliberations, and drafts, consulting with appropriate staff, and reviewing the bylaws to determine whether they're serving their intended purposes and making recommendations to the town council. So it's a very broad charge. I suspect GOL will have comments on that when they discuss it. So at this point, the council has not
Point of
decided.
order, the motion on the floor pertains to designating GOL for the
Yes.
appointment process, not the charge itself. The proposed charge with those changes are in the GOL folder for tomorrow evening, and they're posted on the website.
Thank you for that, Athena. Jennifer,
Two questions. So GOL, this is,
can you speak into the mic?
yeah, so this motion is for the charge.
This motion is to designate GOL to make recommendations on appointing the people who would serve on the committee.
I did, okay. Next question was, are these to review general bylaws and zoning or just general?
Just general is what the committee would do, not zoning bylaws. And that's per the charter. That one can't change. Any questions on whether GOL, the council wants to designate GOL to make those to make the recommendations on who to appoint to this committee, even though we don't quite have the charge for the committee yet? I know it can be hard to make that determination as to whether they're the right committee or not. Jennifer, your hand is still up. No. Andy.
Given that the task at hand is just to give the task of how to, of who's going to nominate the people, it seems like an appropriate committee to do that.
Thank you. I made a motion and it was seconded by Anna. Yeah. Seeing no other hands, we will begin voting. Andy.
Aye.
Anna.
Aye.
Lynn.
Aye.
Mandy is an aye. Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Pam.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Brevick.
Yes.
Counselor Kendall Martin.
Yes.
That is unanimous. Appointments, we made the appointments under the consent agenda, so they have been done. We are moving on to committee and liaison reports. Budget coordinating group, there's not really a report because it hasn't met, but my intention is to begin in talking to Paul. Paul normally is the one, since there is no chair right now, that under the charter is tasked with calling the BCG. And so I will be discussing it with him because of the budget guidelines update on budgets coming out in mid-February. The hope is that we would have a BCG meeting sometime in mid to late February after that comes out. So I will be working with him to call that meeting. That's my update on budget coordinating group. Community Resources Committee. Actually, before I go to Community Resources Committee, I had on my list of things to congratulate, people haven't heard, congratulate the 2 chairs and vice chairs that have been elected so far. So for Community Resources Committee, it is Pam Rooney as chair and Andy Churchill as vice chair. And for finance, it's Kathy Shane as chair and Lynn Griesemer as vice chair. So Community Resources Committee, Pam.
Well, let me start out by saying the meeting was convened by President Haneke for the first meeting of the term. She also opened the floor for nominations. Pam Rooney was nominated. I'm not going to go into details, and accepted and won. Andy Churchill was nominated, accepted and won. And then we moved to business, which is Stephanie Ciccarello, Director of Sustainability, spoke to us about the work that was done by the staff, a number of staff who worked very hard since December to meet and review the draft clean energy / solar bylaw that was requested for review back in December. And we acknowledged that the town staff had worked very hard on this document. The current document then now has been sent back to CRC, and it reflects integration of the original work of the solar bylaw working group, the CRC's earlier drafting efforts, and finally the integration with the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources Clean Energy template. I will be putting forward a draft schedule on how the CRC meetings, the planning board meetings, the council meetings, the GOL meetings all will interface to get this bylaw done by October 1. And that's going to be the primary task of the CRC for this year.
Thank you. DPW Building Committee, I believe that's you, Pam, and there was a meeting, I believe, right?
DPW Building Committee met on January 21. And the next step is to ask the previous consultant to sort of finish up the work that they did in a schematic proposal and feasibility study. They will come back and say, here's what might have changed in the, how many years? 7 or 8 or something. I can't do the math on my feet. To come back and say, these are some of the things, these are some of the trends that may have happened in the meantime. But it's going to be a committee that meets probably every 2 weeks, and we will bring a DPW to fruition.
Thank you. Elementary School Building Committee. Kathy.
I was just looking at dates to try to figure out whether I already reported this at the last council meeting, but we met in the second week of January, and the building continues to be on schedule. There were no major issues. There was one change that ended up being identified for the solar canopies, that because of the soil condition, they need more steel and more cement than had originally been described in the geotechnical drawings and engineering. So that is going to be, that change has already gone in. There was some concern, one member from the school said there were rumors out there that it wasn't on time, that the building wasn't going to open in September. And right now it is going to open in September. We are on schedule, and there's some initial work thinking through a way of, before the school officially opens for the students, doing a walkthrough of teachers and community to celebrate the opening of the school. So that's being worked on with the town staff and the school staff. So no dates are set. The next meeting is February 13th, but right now the meetings really are construction updates for the most part, and they're short.
Thank you. Finance Committee.
Finance Committee met, I guess, 2 weeks ago. We did some reviews. We got the second quarter report. We did some reviews of what are in the guidelines. And in the course of doing that, one of the things we flagged was the middle school auditorium roof, where we had put in that we would like to see that we would welcome a proposal from the regional school to include that section of the roof, under the understanding that the roof was in poor condition. At the point we were meeting, the regional school had said they weren't going to take any action on it. And the reason was that the other 3 towns would have had to convene town meetings to vote their part, and there wasn't going to be enough time before it had to be posted and voted out. So the Finance Committee wrote a memo asking for information on what the condition of the roof is, how dire is it, and what the price tag was, with the opportunity to say Amherst might be willing to pay for the whole amount. The difference is 1.6 is the whole amount, 1.2 would be the share, so that the roof could be done at the same time as the rest of the roof, providing it's urgent. We just got that memo at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock this afternoon from the chair of the regional school committee. They voted unanimously to respond to us and get us the information. and asked for it. So we now have that memo from them with documentation on the scale of the roof. One of the issues I wanted to raise tonight is the timeline of when they're going out to bid doesn't match our timeline and when we might consider this, because it would have to come out of our certified free cash, unless we want to take it out of the capital reserve right now. And the next meeting we have on the 9th is just a discussion, a working session on the charter. So the only way I could see at least starting a conversation, getting a sense of the council would be if we had a special section of that meeting or a separate meeting that said, is there interest in this or not, so that we could convey that to the town manager, and then we could have a fuller discussion on it. But otherwise, it won't come up. For certified free cash and how much we have and what it could be used for, and financial orders doesn't come up to the council until the 23rd of February. Finance would then get it referred on the 24th. We're changing a meeting, so we'll be there. And then reporting back to the council. And meanwhile, they're going out to bid for the rest of the roof. So we've got the two timelines don't. So one of the things that might be possible, if we think we might be interested, is there could be a conditional that we might be asking for another bid for the rest of the roof if the first part of the roof goes out in full force. But I have no idea on how that might work in a procurement process. So we opened the door with the finance committee asking for the information, and we got it back today. They had done a thorough look at this roof. The only reason it wasn't included is MSBA had a very strict, it had to be more than 25 years old. It will be more than 25 years old next year. And the report we just got back is it's actively leaking onto the stage and actively dripping down the wall of the auditorium. So it's not just potentially leaking, it is leaking. And they're spending a certain amount of money each year on temporary repairs. And they documented those repairs in the memo they just sent us back. And as I said, we just got this afternoon. I sent it to the finance committee meeting members so we can see it tomorrow. But the question I want to have the council address under this 48-hour rule, are we interested in this, and how do we confront the timeline? Or whether it was clear in what I was asking, but we would have to know that we are interested in being asked for Paul to come with a financial order on it for us to have a vote on it. We don't have anything like that in front of us right now, other than the price tag is around 1.6.
So before I see there's hands up on this, I want to make a few comments. I will address any timing of scheduling agendas during the future agenda items, including what Kathy just spoke to, as I talk to what our future agenda items are and what our restrictions on them are and potential timings of anything. The manager may also talk about some of that during his report. I don't know. But I will talk about future agenda items, including this possible agenda item during that time. This is a finance committee report. We do not have on this agenda anything related to discussing the substantive nature of any appropriation. I do not want us to get into that because it would be a violation of open meeting law, because it is also not something that I could not have reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. So I will rule out of order and any discussion on that at this time, but will talk about the timing of the agenda when we get to future agenda items. Given that, Councillor Ryan.
I don't know what's left for me to talk about here.
You can ask questions
I'm going to ask a
future
question.
agenda items.
I'm going to be
but I
safe
wouldn't
and ask a
do
question
the whole thing
before I get ruled out of order. It sounds like Kathy, the question to Kathy is that she's looking for a sense of the council as to whether we are in support of moving ahead. Is that a fair?
Yes, and actually, I had asked to get it on the agenda for tonight and was told it didn't fit. So
Okay.
just people know, I knew,
Okay.
I knew if the region came back with us, we might be able to discuss it. So my question was twofold, George, is the next meeting we have is the 9th. And would there be any way of having a special meeting a half hour before that so we could discuss this? Because otherwise, we're not going to have an opportunity to discuss it till February 23rd. So it's a timing issue on it.
So again, I will talk about the
And you can
timing
address that during
during
the meeting.
future agenda items.
So I guess I will just stop speaking.
Kathy, your hand is still up.
Okay, the only other thing I can say is the charter does give the right for any 3 counselors to ask for a special meeting of the council to not just go into whatever the plan is. So I understand this is a unusual request and it's purely on the timing. The regional school, for whatever reasons, I think because of other things they were dealing with, they didn't take this up in the fall. They knew we were interested in the auditorium roof and they didn't take it up till the second week in January. So it's put us under this timeline issue, which is unfortunate.
Seeing no other hands, GOL meets tomorrow. So we'll wait till next meeting for GOL's report and an announcement of a chair and vice chair amongst whatever else is on their agenda for tomorrow. I believe they'll have 2 meetings before our next regular meeting too. Jones Library Building Committee, George.
So this committee has not met since I gave my last report. We will meet again on the 9th of February.
Thank you. Town Services and Outreach meets on Thursday to elect their chair and vice chair and whatever else is on their agenda, updates on carryover items and all. So we will hear from them at the next regular council meeting. The Transportation Parking Commission is on there just to keep track of because there will be counselors on it. It has not been appointed yet, so there is not any report from there, but I'm working on putting everything in that we're going to regularly hear reports from on that. And we don't technically have liaisons yet, but I was wondering if the Regional School Committee's Fiscal Sustainability Subcommittee has met and if our counselors has been there yet, because I forgot to add that one to our council committee updates.
Yes,
Kathy?
we did meet, and all the designees from the other 3 towns were there. And we basically talked about the mission of the committee and what it does and does not do. One of the interesting things, at least I discovered, is it doesn't do the budget and it doesn't do audit. It thinks about larger policy issues. So particularly legislative issues around the state budget. So we raised a series of questions that we might want to explore, including an issue of should the 4 towns start to think about potential regionalization again. The Pelham representative talked about potentially not potentially, doesn't have enough students in Pelham to support the Pelham school, and the rest of the students are choice in, so the economics aren't working. But there was some interest in thinking about what would we, if we revisited the regional side of the elementary school world. And there was some interest in that in the other towns. And the thought of rethinking the 6th through 8th grade as a real 6th through 8th grade middle school rather than a 6th grade sitting alone with the 7th and 8th grade middle school. So there was some very interesting from Leverett, Shutesbury, and Pelham saying, oh, we could be thinking about this differently. So that was just one of the topics rather than in any depth. And all of this is future thinking, not current thinking.
Thank you. Pam?
Thank you. This actually goes back to town services and outreach. I didn't know if there was any material officially, there's nothing in the packet, I mean, in the SharePoint folder that would give any indication of carryover items. It is in the public.
Please use a mic.
I'm sorry. It was in the packet either for the last meeting that we had or the very first meeting we had in January. Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe it's in the public packet.
And Jennifer is saying it's in the website packet, not SharePoint for tomorrow's meeting too. Right.
Thursday's meeting.
Sorry, Thursday's meeting. I'm still trying to get in my head which one goes on. So It should be there. We'll try and
The
get SharePoint.
the carryover memo is in the SharePoint packet, Pam.
Thank you, Athena.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy.
Yes, in my reporting about the last council meeting, I forgot to tell you what's on the agenda for tomorrow's council, that finance committee meeting. We are getting a basic primer, but also update on budget numbers of what are our stabilization fund or capital shape, how do they work, and how much money is in them, and a discussion of the ambulance fund. What is it? How much money is in it? And how does that work? So it's the finance director, those dollar numbers are in the packet for anyone who wants to see where we are at the most current dates. And it will be walking through what the purpose of them now are, how they can be used. And at this point, I will put in the packet tomorrow morning the response from the regional school committee, so everyone on the committee knows where we are, but that was not on the agenda.
That response was received late, so I know it's in my email. It will get forwarded to the whole council when I finally get to my email later today too. Like I put the letter from finance into the packet. It's just, I haven't gotten my email with the meeting tonight. So the whole council will receive it. Seeing no other hands, we're moving on to the town manager report. Paul?
Thank you. So first I want to give thanks to the DPW for just really heroic work that they did during the snowstorm, 30 hours straight work for many of them. They continue to work, though they worked overnight, so they're going to be working overnight again starting tomorrow night to help clear the snow from intersections and from downtown to create more parking. The amount of snow is 17 inches to 20 inches, depending on where you were in town. Plus the fact that it stayed cold and the snow stayed there created a real challenge for our DPW crews. And then there are all things that happen along the way. Is when you're plowing snow, you hit things, pieces of equipment fail. I provided you with sort of a TikTok on how we approach these snowstorms, because an event like this really generates a lot of questions to you as counselors. So I want you to have some basic information on how our crews approach things. I had one mistake in it, and I think I said 110 lane miles. It wasn't lane miles, it's actually road. So if you have to multiply by 2 if it's a 2-lane road, or 4 if it's a 4-lane road. So it's actually at least twice as many miles of lanes that they have to plow. And about 35 miles of sidewalks that the town takes care of as well. So I just want to give a lot of credit for our DPW crews who really worked a lot to meet the needs of the snowstorm. And on top of that, so we can, once the weather starts to warm up and snow starts to disappear and starts to melt, you'll start to see a lot of potholes. Don't be surprised, because the way potholes are formed is when water gets into cracks or fissures in the roadway, and then it freezes again at night. It pops it open because it expands and breaks open the pavement. And so we have a lot of potholes already. We'll probably have a lot more. Our crews will be out as soon as they can. They can't fill wet potholes, but we're in for a bit of a rough road, literally, for a while here. So again, they'll be out there fixing them as best they can. I just want to remind you that there is an event at Amherst College tomorrow morning. You're all welcome to attend. If you haven't, think we sent out a reminder. If not, it's a very informal, no expectations, but there'll be sort of little breakfast goods. It's a way to start to build relationships with people at Amherst College, and so town staff and town counselors are invited to attend, and others. I'm not sure exactly who they all invited. Just a note that I wanted to mention, the high school has really started to be more aggressive about not allowing parking in the fire lane in front of the high school. Has become a real issue. People tend to park there, and when there's an emergency, we really need that area cleared, and especially with snow, it's become an issue. So the schools have decided that it's really important for them to keep that clear. It's going to be, we have to ask people to break a habit that we've gotten into. So just so you're aware of that, I don't want you to get towed or anything like that. And the big news for us is that, at the MMA meeting, Maya announced that we've been budgeting about 18% increase for health insurance. At the MMA meeting, they announced that it would be the range that Maya would be giving out is between 2.9 and 14.4%. Today, this afternoon, we got our actual rate. So our actual rates are 8.3%, which is a huge increase, huge benefit to our town, to the schools, everybody, libraries. So we haven't really calculated that impact, but that once we are able to do that, that will release a lot of money for us to do the core services that we're really trying to fund.
Could you repeat that number again?
8.3. I think it's 8.3, 8.5, something like that.
So less than half what we were
Yeah.
budgeting.
So so it's really good news. And so I think we'll see how that helps us. It will definitely help us, but we can talk a little bit more at the Finance Committee. Sean's been sick the last couple of days as well. Everybody's a little bit sick lately. So not sure how much analysis we've done with that, but because I just came in this afternoon. So that's great news for us.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Ryan.
I was kind of asked how that happens, how that comes about. Is this like divine intervention? There must be some explanation. That's just an idle question.
No,
The good news is it's 8.3%, but part of me wonders, how that actually comes
So
about.
I would like to answer that actually. So
Thank you.
the way I'm actually, full disclosure, I'm on the Maya Trust, so I have different roles. So Maya looks at all their claims. They make and then they group them together as a body, and then they sort of say, how much money do we have to raise? And they try to shield the people who have the biggest increases, so it doesn't hit too hard. This year, the pivotal decision that we made was not to cover GLP-1 drugs for weight loss anymore, and that was 4 to 5% reduction. That is an incredible hit on the health insurance right now. I think some of our people who are employed who really have benefited from it will not be happy about that change of benefits, but it's important for us to make that benefits given our financial condition at this point in time. GLP-1s, which are the Ozempic and things like that, that still will be available for diabetes treatment and things like that. But probably the biggest decision that was faced by Maya in probably in many years. Blue Cross Blue Shield has already decided that they were not going to cover it anymore. The Group Insurance Commission, which covers state employees in many municipalities, they're deciding whether to cover it on February 12th when they meet. So there's a lot of pressure from the governor for them not to cover it, but I think I'm not sure how they're going to vote. So that was a major impact on it. And then they also look at our experience. We had a big increase last year, and so I think that we sort of like right size what we were paying last year, and so we didn't have to have as big an increase this year. And so it's based on our experience as of I think it goes back to October.
Councilor Ryan, question?
One other quick thing. There's another bit of good news. I think you've already shared it. Probably most of my colleagues know, but for anyone who's watching and for those who don't know, the town received an award, and I wonder if you would mention that.
Yes. So the MMA meeting also is where the governor released she released her budget after the MMA meeting. So that's another point of clarity for the Finance Committee. So we now know what the governor's number is. Usually we really go to the House Ways and Means number is the one where it's more reliable. But the town, the Morning Movement Mentoring Program specifically received the Innovation Award from the Mass Municipal Association. And we had a number of people who went to the meeting at the end of January. Sehal Crouch, who is the person who started, he worked with the Parent Information Center at the schools. It was his idea. He came up with it. He recruited people to participate. It's been a wild success. Just the number of students who are participating. And if you haven't had a chance, I think everybody knows what it is. It's an early, before school starts, middle school students come to the high school and participate in sports, weightlifting. They get mentoring from people. People are checking in with them. I think the thing that draws them is the ability to use the big gym and to use the weight room, the varsity weight room under supervision. When it first started several years ago, kids were just getting there on their own. Their parents were like, "Why are you getting up so early to be there at 7 a.m.? Because school doesn't start till 8:50 or something like that in the middle school, 9." So it was sort of stunning. So any of you who'd like to visit, it goes Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. It's incredibly popular. They have about 55 kids, I think, who are there. They sort of capped it at that right now. I think I can give you a lot more. I think we put some of that in the town manager report. Over half the kids have IEPs. They get a lot of guidance. There's a lot of athletes from UMass and from Amherst College who come regularly to interact with the kids, play volleyball, play basketball. Police officers, Cress, the fire department had somebody coming for a while. Recreation is major. Becky Demling really big on it. So it's just one of those programs that you just got. This is a real success, and I think the MMA recognized that, and that's why it got the innovation award.
Thank you. Counselor Kendall Martin.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, I know that you had asked the various town departments to present a budget that would either be level services, and then what would the 10% cut look like if they had to do that? And I just wondered when that information will come to us as a council, or in what way, or will it go to finance first, or just?
So what we asked the departments to do is to give us a level services budget, like what would it cost to do the services that you truly need? What would it be a level funded budget, meaning that you have the same money you had last year, and what would that take? And then also to implement a 10% cut, what would that look like? So we're collecting that information. We haven't begun our meetings with the departments yet, but we will soon. We will gather that information, and that will be part of our budget presentation to the council. But, we're going to revisit all that because we'll have new information based on the health insurance.
Sam.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to, based on Paul's report, to commend the town staff and the DPW for their phenomenal response to the storm. I saw them out in a few different places. I talked to one of the employees. I was just so impressed. After the guy was up 24 hours, he was chipper. I'm just like, are you kidding me? How much Mountain Dew are you drinking? Phenomenal response, and they don't always get a lot of kudos, but they really serve us well, and they really came through without a lot of fanfare. So I just want to say that publicly.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the town council comments section of the agenda. First is the president's report. I already congratulated the chairs and vice chairs of finance and CRC that have been elected. The Four Towns meeting, the notice came out today. So it was tentative as of last week, but it sounds like they're happening February 28th at 9 a.m. in the middle school for the next Four Towns meeting. We received the notice from the regional school committee chair today. So please mark your calendars for that. I want to just do a reminder that as chairs get elected per our rules of procedure, reports from committees are due to Athena, our clerk, by Wednesday before a council meeting. For committees that meet on a Thursday right before a council meeting, the report is due by Friday morning, so it can be in the packet. So I'm going to remind all chairs, and then once every chair is elected, Athena and I are going to be convening a meeting of chairs to go over the rules of procedures for chairs, expectations, procedures, how to ensure that an item that is out of a committee is put on an agenda in a timely manner, because we're going to need notice of when things get done, and some of that's going to be by report. So it's going to look a little different than it has in the past, but just look for an email once all the chairs are elected from myself and Athena trying to get together a meeting to talk about sort of expectations for chairs. That's my one rules reminder for the meeting. I do want a meeting, so we're going to work our way through them. Future agenda items. So next week is our work session. It starts at 6:30 and will end around 10 unless the council wants to move it to go later. By our rules of procedure, it is required to be on one topic only. So this is why I wanted to address this. So I cannot during the work session or as part of that agenda, add any other topic to the work session. That does not mean another meeting could be called, but we need all 3.5 hours for that work session. And we're going to need another hour on February 23rd at a minimum, given how I'm seeing things come through and working through timings. So I'm just going to talk about that for the work session. Prior to the work session, our town attorney will be here to be a meet and greet from 5:30 to 6:30 for the work session. There will be a selection of sandwiches available because we know it's hard for counselors to get here and also eat. So the town attorney really wants to meet the counselors that she and the rest of the KP Law is working with. And so we thought that would be a good time for people to come and talk to the town attorney. That's 5:30 to 6:30. Has been on the schedule for a couple weeks. I believe I told the council about that about 2 weeks ago. February 23rd, there is a hearing already noticed for an Eversource petition for a pole relocation. I think it's been noticed for 6:35 probably, but for the first item on the agenda. There are 2 proclamations, one proclamation already here that we expect to be on February 23rd, and one that is expected to arrive and get referred to GOL for consideration as soon as I receive it. I have not received it yet, and that is the typical March 10th Tibet Day proclamation, but it has not been received yet, but it is on my radar. Presentations, a road improvement plan, and continued discussion of the charter review recommendations, that because I don't expect to finish the conversation on the 9th. Financial orders as action items and approval of the Eversource petition. Those are things that are on the agenda that I do not want to move for timing purposes. Kathy is right that she approached me a week or so ago asking for an agenda item tonight for regarding the middle school roof. I went to the manager and asked if all the financial orders could be ready in time for tonight's meeting, given our rules of procedure. They could not. Our rules of procedure require that they be ready by Wednesday of the week before a meeting. The vice president and I determined that all financial orders related to the use of free cash after being certified by the state should be presented at once, so that the council gets an entire view of the potential money and appropriations available in this fiscal year for various projects. And because the vice president and I made that determination, and because they could not be available tonight, I told the finance committee chair, Kathy, that they would continue to be scheduled for February 23rd. So that is the reason they are on that agenda, and I do not want to move them off that agenda. We did just receive the formal request from the school committee today for a potential request to appropriate full funding. It is my understanding, although I have not spoken to the school committee, it's just from reading memos, that the bid that is going out for the roof is including an alt-add option for the auditorium part. My understanding of that means that if it includes that alt-add, any money funded, if the council were to choose to potentially gift something to the region, would need to be done before a contract is signed, not before bids go out, because it is already included in the bid. That is from my reading of memos and the meeting that the school committee had at one point. I could be wrong. I will work on confirming that. But that gives, if that is accurate, that gives more time. Any financial order that comes to us requires a hearing under the charter because it is a supplemental appropriation. Those hearings are being scheduled for the March 9th meeting. So there is a plan, I will say that. Other items that might be on the February 23rd agenda, if they are ready and if there are if there is time. I'm not sure there will be time, but we'll see how we can fit things in. Ready for this list? The CPA recommendations, the bylaw review committee charge, a university drive easement, and potentially other easements from the DPW to clean up some other public way matters. Naming the town a Purple Heart town and public way requests from the Amherst Farmers Market, Amherst Feminist Generation, and the Purple Heart Town for signs, as well as potentially council appointments for liaisons to town boards and committees, the council liaisons, and potentially appointments for the Recreations Committee and the Cable TV Committee. Those are, we don't know if all of them will be ready. I will just say that. And some of them probably will not be ready, but that is sort of the near-term list to try and get done. So it's going to be busy. I'm going to be trying to figure out what can be moved off that agenda. But keep in mind, the 2 March agendas have the Charter Review Committee's 22 amendments to address too by the end of March. So it will be a very busy next 4 meetings if you count the work session. Questions on future agenda items or requests for others? Councillor Cano-Martin. Oh, sure. You were going to raise your hand, Kathy?
Yeah, I had to go.
Oh, oh my gosh, look at all those. Okay, sorry, I'll go in order. I didn't even see all those hands. Anna.
Amber, you're not, oh,
Amber has
Sorry.
sorry, Councillor Cano-Martin has a councillor comment, not a future
okay,
agenda
my
item.
bad. Brain is starting to fail me. With the conversations with chairs a couple of minutes ago, is it possible to include vice chairs if it's strictly a logistical and information sharing session?
We will
Might
work
you
on doing that,
consider?
yes.
Thank you.
Will do. Andy Churchill.
Yeah, I just feel like Kathy's request it seems pretty important. And if you're right that the alt add clause or whatever is in effect and that buys us time, then great. But I'd like to make sure that that's the case. And if it's not the case, then I would say maybe we ask if the law firm could move dinner a half an hour earlier and we could have a half hour to get a sense of the committee. I don't know exactly how that would work, but I understand the need to, or the desirability of having the whole financial picture and knowing what the impact of putting an extra 400,000 toward the school roof from Amherst, but it seems like it's a pretty dire need.
So I will work on trying to confirm that. I have not read the memo that came in tonight, so that memo may actually address timing. I don't know. But I will work on trying to confirm that to try and do that. I do not know about town attorneys or anything. And I would be really hesitant to call a meeting before the town attorney. Many of us have problems getting to meetings before 6:30. But I understand the importance of it. A public forum of the council needs heard no matter what, and we cannot act without a financial order from the manager either. It is not something we can do without a financial order. The manager has to produce one of them. So I've been in contact with him too. And we did not get a formal request from the regional school committee until today at 4:35 p.m. Another thing. And so trying to manage it all. I will just say that. Kathy Shane.
Just quickly building on what Andy said, if you could confirm the adult, I did read the memo. They don't have any mention of it. They just have their timeline. So if the timeline has first, they have to advertise it, then they put out the bid. If it could be advertised with the adult and the bid, then the timing is not as urgent as I did it. They didn't identify that. I know we did that with Bangs and we did it with the track and field, where we had a couple of things that in that case, it was if the bid came in under a certain amount of money, we'd want to spend the extra money on something. Yeah. But if you could confirm that, because otherwise, I realize you can't put it in the same agenda as a work thing, but I was thinking, could we carve out a half hour as a special meeting? And I understand what you're saying. We're going to need the whole time, but a half an hour on this called special meeting might still be warranted. So whatever you can do, Mandy, if that can be the case, then what I described as a timing collision is less of a concern.
Like I said, I will work to do it. I watched the meeting where they declined to, I don't know when it was, but declined to pursue the option. So that was about 4 or 5 weeks ago now. And my memory is that Shannon in that meeting mentioned that it was an adult on the bid, but I could be misunderstanding that too. But I will work on confirming that. Counselor Brevik.
Just want to share my support for a special meeting if that is, so yeah, looking forward to hearing what you come back with. If it does come back that the timeline doesn't add up and the 23rd would be an issue, I think it should take priority over other things that we have. I think it would be nice to meet with the lawyers, but if that's not related to something that we really need right in this moment, I would be in support of a special meeting preceding the next meeting.
Thank you for the feedback. Counselor Kendall Martin, we're moving on to counselor comments. Did you want to make
Yeah,
one?
I do. So this is partially, I guess, well, mostly in reaction to the public comment we received from Andrew Brace from the president, who's the president of the DPW Association. And I find it really alarming that they've been in contract negotiations for over a year and are in mediation. They've been 7 months without a contract. And as someone who's worked in the labor movement for almost 20 years now, that's a really bad situation to be in for any worker to be working without a contract. And especially everyone's recognized the good work that they've done recently with snow removal and has praised them, but workers can't live on praise alone. And, we need to be giving them a fair and living wage, and we need to make sure that they have good working conditions and the benefits that they need. And I, for one, to the extent it's possible, would like to hear a further report about why the negotiations are going so poorly and what we can do to help those workers, because it's really unfair for them to be in that situation.
Thank you. Any other counselor comments? Seeing none, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Shane seconds.
We start with, I believe, Anna Devlin Gauthier.
Aye.
Lynn Griesemer.
Aye.
Mandy Jo Haneke is an aye. Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Sam McLeod.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Brevik.
Yes.
Counselor Cano Martin.
Yes.
And Andy Churchill.
Yes.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned at 10:15 p.m.